Good evening. As you can see, I appear to not have any friends yet tonight. This is intended to be Midweek Geek, and my regular panelists appear to have done a runner. They may well join me in a bit. We shall see. They've probably just forgotten. I mean, I'm a forgettable sort, so it's only natural. But we do have people waiting in chat, so I feel duty bound to do something right now. So hello Christopher from the Hilt. Hello Lee. You'll be glad to know. That your suggestion for improving my internet is working beautifully. Halakar scared them away, very probably. I'm terrifying. Hello, Kelsey, or is that Daniel hiding? It's not Friday, so Daniel, you shouldn't be doing this on a Wednesday. Hello, Brian. Hello, Old Men Rolling Dice. Hello, Doof. Hello, Andy, and hello, Roland. How are you all on this fine evening? I don't know if anybody will be joining me tonight. I'm hoping somebody does. You're cooking. Fair enough. I know Elf Bates got visitors tonight, and I know horror isn't Sean Major's Musings topic, but if anybody else wants to dive in, a Saxius or an Omenal or a Bear or anybody else who's been joining in recently, more than welcome. And if someone wants to join me for the first time, you can do so. But I might as well talk about games I've been playing recently, because I have done some gaming in recent weeks. Hello, Crafting Gamer. This week, my Monday game was called off due to various lurgies. Most of the players, it's a face-to-face game, most of the players are parents, and a lot of what happens when kids go to school in autumn months when the weather turns and gets damp, they bring home bugs. So so we had to call off Monday, unfortunately. Saturday, though, we played an OSE/DCC funnel. Gingerbeard ran it, and it was a chance for those of us who play the OSE games that we run in the channel on a Saturday. It was a chance for us to bring back some of our dead characters, because he resurrected them in another realm, put us through a DCC funnel, and whoever succeeded got resurrected. And the only character that didn't succeed was Geekus, my paladin. Everybody else got resurrected. We do have a Saxius.
Hello, I made it. Yes.
Yes. I was just talking about the games played at the weekend. So I'll come to you in a minute. And then on Saturday evening, instead of my usual OSE slot, I introduced some relative horror newbies to Call of Cthulhu. Some of our regulars in the chat. Brian was there, RW Bishop was there, and then we had No Saurian, and we had Daniel, and we had a right jolly old time. I took them through the classic Cracked and Crooked Manse from the Mansions of Madness scenario. They lent into their characters really well. It's going to take a little bit of adapting in terms of play styles to get used to what is needed for Call of Cthulhu, because they didn't do any investigation before going to the location, so they effectively walked into a seemingly unoccupied house, which obviously is going to have some sort of mythos link. They effectively walked in completely unprepared and not knowing what they were walking into in the slightest. And unsurprisingly, 3 characters ended up dead, and the other one had to walk back 15 odd miles back to town in the middle of the night, wet, cold, and having put through his some of the most unpleasant fears possible, seeing his friends get swallowed up by goo. And yeah, it's marvelous. It's very good. But they enjoyed it. They really enjoyed it, which was good. And I'll hopefully run a few more Call of Cthulhu scenarios over the next few weeks in Discord. Unfortunately, I'm not available a week on Saturday, which would be an ideal time to run one. But I'll see if I can rustle one up on a Thursday, perhaps, in over the next week or two. Is this private chat message from you, Saxius? Yes, it is. Yes, I can see that. So, Saxius, that's the extent of my gaming, those 2 sessions.
Yep.
Week. Tell us about yours.
Well, I had 2 this weekend. I had my real life group. We met up. We had about a 2-month hiatus. We continued with the Red Hand of Doom, and it was a roaring success. They are in the chapter where they have to brave into a swamp because they have located a site where the army has basically set up, or the enemy army has set up a breeding ground where there are going to be created a myriad of wyverns and lesser wyvern types. A lot of like pseudo dragons are being born and bred there, which, as the players learned through NPC exposition, effectively, if an enemy has got air dominance, that is really bad. That is terrifyingly bad, especially when you're looking at wyverns and all of their poisons that they can deal with.
Yes.
So it was made quite clear, that's a big problem. But followed up from that, they also needed to negotiate with a group of sylphs or forest elves who were embanked right by where the swamp was located, and they were being targeted by this by all of the newly hatched creatures that were just swooping through their lands, and just without regard for the nature and its balance, they were causing all sorts of havoc, and they were being backed up by a number of spellcasters and just the sheer quantity of Roman legionnaire inspired hobgoblins. So the players had a lot to take on, and they realized that a frontal assault really wasn't what they wanted. So they made clever use of various disguise spells and made use of just general player ingenuity for hiding their own scents. Got close, and once they got close enough, the 5e powers kicked in, and the players quickly remembered just how powerful they were, and they ensued in having a good time as they were in the middle of the enemy encampment, able to at least level out some of the disadvantages they would have had from a frontal attack. So they enjoyed that. And the big boss of that 5-hour long session was a big black dragon who, at one point, I rolled 58 points of damage from an acid breath, and one of the characters affected had a maximum of 60. So there was a lot of me putting forward arguments for trying to just squeeze in 2 more points so that I could initiate the 5th edition rule of, if an enemy does enough damage to equal to the total hit points of the character, they are permanently dead. So I enjoyed the back and forth of throwing out arguments for why I should be able to do more damage. They had to then counter argue and back and forth. I found it greatly amusing, and it helped sort of generate for the players to work a lot very closely as a team to sort of defend themselves and think of all the clever things to get around the various rulings I was trying to throw out, which it was good. It definitely developed a good sense of camaraderie amongst the players, and that's exactly what I wanted out of it. And that was an absolute blast to have. Followed by that, I had my Sunday game where the players they are in there. That's the one, Halicar. System Shock Death. It's a great side rule. I really do like that. And then the second one on Sunday was the Frontier, where the players had just defeated a group of slaving Kuotoas by a large quantity, and they were learning that there's a void when you overthrow one of the bigger regional players, and that void looks to be filled in with the sea hags that are coming in to try and take over. So the players were making their way back up. They have summoned reinforcements. They have brought hirelings this time.
I had expected the void to be filled in by goblins, maybe, or hobgoblins, or orcs, as they do, but sea hags.
Yeah. Yes. Because, well, no, we're only 10 minutes and I can't swear yet. Because the players can have a hard time. That's I'm just going to give it to them. I'm just not going to give them I'm not going to give them an easy time. So the players were marching back up to where they had just had the big battle, and although they had won, they had won at a cost. So they're very wary right now. And there's a lot of discussion amongst the NPCs about how they want to do it, and the players are quickly realizing it's very good to have friends. It's very good to have hirelings. Asking NPCs who have got specialties in different fields is showing them that they can go back to the fort for information, and they don't have to be the font of all knowledge themselves. They don't have to be so self-sufficient in all this, and that's a great thing. And from the random tables, I just rolled up that randomly there would be Yanti showing up. But I decided, like, no, we're not just going to have another group of just snake people showing up for this. No, we're going to have escaped purebloods from an empire that is trying to basically break out and start anew, and then give hints over what I have planned for other parts of the world. So the players engaged with them, learned, talked, met the overseer that was trying to come out of the waters to kill them, because they was from a wrecked ship nearby that they were witnessing all of this, and they were able to save them and bring them back. And then they were contacted because the warlock of the party has made a subcontract for a being that is not quite undead, but he's stuck somewhere in between, and he is working with the warlock of the group, and he was sent to spy on the player's behalf, and one of the hags managed to corner this spy, but rather than offering the spy, she said, "Go back to your master and give a proposition." So now the players, rather than having a here's the next big monster, go in and kill it, they now have some options. They can negotiate. They can try and see if they can play the politics of the hags. They can see if they can find a way to deal with all of them at once, or they can see if they can go out and learn something on their own. But we ended
Hags
very
have
much
politics beyond eat babies and conjure nasty goo.
Well, it's a covenant.
Oh, you've met my sister. Huh, cool.
It's a covenant. Hag politics is an active thing, if you ask me, because as it says in the 5e books, they're always fighting for getting the little bit edge against everyone else. So there's a lot of politics in my interpretation.
They do that by eating their kids.
Yes, they do that, but there's more to it, John. There is more to it.
I know.
John likes his monsters as simple as he likes a plain dairy milk chocolate or Jersey milk chocolate bar. He doesn't want it full of nuts and crunchy bits. He just wants the chocolate. Simple's easy for John.
If I was to eat a dairy milk chocolate bar right now, all you would hear, all stream would be followed by my wife going, "Is that you?"
Oh man, I could have made a joke and I just didn't.
He sets himself up sometimes.
I know, but I was against a joke against his wife, and I don't know her, so that's not right.
We have some standards.
Gotta have them.
She doesn't. She married me.
See, being of Northern European stock as opposed to whatever you are, John, cow's milk has no negative effects on me other than calories.
Well, it has plenty of those, doesn't it?
Oh, plenty.
Yeah. Hey, I'm going to welcome to the stream Grumpy Old Slan and Bear, the Gen X GM. Good evening, fellas.
Greetings.
Right, before we get into any more topics, Slan, did you play any games at the weekend?
Yeah, well, actually, I was at the Montreal Games Con this weekend, Draconis. So I spent a lot of time because I was helping out at the garage sale. And I sold a few things, which I'm happy about because I have a little more space now. And I played a game of DCC, the Dungeon Crawl Classics, which was quite fun. And the DM after the game, let me flip through the book, which has some great tables in it for all sorts
it
of
does,
stuff.
doesn't it?
So
It's a sort of game that I played in DK's game of it, and I enjoyed it because it was fortnightly for about 2 hours. It's a sort of thing where you can just go bonkers for a short time, but I wouldn't want to play it anymore.
Yeah. Well, it was like
it was fun.
2.5 hour session, not too long. DM had to do some last minute improvisation because we had some very young players at the table, like 9 or 10. So we so we could go quite as dark as we might have otherwise, but that's okay. They had fun. We had fun. And the con was fun overall. Like, I don't know, 230, 250 people or so showed up total, from what I understood. And that was my gaming for this week.
That's why you didn't take part in any of our other games at the weekend.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm just going to come back to a comment earlier before Bear gets back.
I'm back. But go for your
Halakar says his bumbling group missed confronting the Yogg Saturday. Is that some boss based on me that you've got in the game?
Well, naturally.
Yeah.
Oh, good. Oh, good. I'm intrigued, Halakar. Please. I'd like to know more about the Yogg because it sounds interesting.
Sounds deliciously evil.
Sounds deliciously lactose intolerant.
Oh yes. Well,
all
bad guys have a weakness, and I've told you all about mine. So yeah, there you go.
Really, buddy, that's not your weakness.
That's not your weakness.
That's not your weakness.
No,
that's your special attack.
Exactly.
That's your legendary action.
Your weakness is whenever we come up to you, is like, here's a game. It's Pathfinder. It's something different. And you just go,
yeah, that's true.
Science fiction.
The thing is, what happens though is my dexterity and my constitution drop to 3 when it happens as well, though. So I may be pumping out the greatest cloud kills and stinking clouds known to humanity, but I'm just a gibbering mess on the floor while it's happening. So so it's a weakness and a strength.
The best ones always are.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Yeah.
Any games, Bear? Any games?
Well, I ran my first live play, Star Trek last week, and it was a big hit. So quite fun there. But you don't care about that because that's spaceships and people with pointed ears. Oh wait, you care about them. Okay. And then Monday night I returned to my Against the Dark Master campaign after a long hiatus from my move. And wow, can you tell I hadn't been reading the rules in the absenteeism, because I was like, Jesus Christ, like ground to a halt as we were looking stuff up and figuring stuff out. And I tell you, man, I love everything in that game except the combat system. I just do not like it. It's so
do what I do when I run MERP. Bullshit it. Do what I do when I run MERP. Just bullshit it.
Well, I would do that, except one of the players is like Captain VTT Foundry, so he set everything up to work together and target the thing and do this. So it's like we got to go through the steps. You know what I mean? So it was a very long, one-sided combat because we learned really quickly arrows win. As the enemies are charging towards you, if you can have round after round of 2 bowmen just peppering them with shots as they attack, by the time they get to close with the melee guys, half their numbers are gone. Their shaman was the first target taken out by the area of the ranged attacks. It was just like, what a shit kicking.
Have they adjusted the tables from MERP then? Because in MERP, arrows, it's more difficult to hit with an arrow, and you can only effectively fire once every 2 rounds because of
because you can. So they have range phase A and range phase B, right? So if you load your arrow in range phase A as a half action, you can fire in range phase B with a penalty.
That's a different MERP.
Yeah, if you load in range phase B, you can't fire again until range phase A of the next round. So they were very effective, and I'll tell you, the melee guys were like, we need to get ranged weapons now because they felt useless until the close of the fight. And then it was 3 hits and it was over.
That's where they changed the system. So in MERP,
did the enemy make use of shields and shield walls?
No, because they're not. They were goat men. They had blunt weapons and a shaman, and they used the terrain and their hyper speed to their advantage.
That's fair enough.
Their artillery got taken out in the first round when basically the halfling and the woodsman just peppered the shit out of the shaman.
Sometimes that's just how some of those games are going to go, or some of those encounters. It's just going to be one-sided, what have you. Like there are still ways that you can still make that into a fun thing of like, oh, look how easily you did that. Oh, it looks like such a hard thing, but you've overcome it. You know, some players will like that, but it's a learning curve. And now you know, and hopefully going forward,
that was just the scouting party.
Oh, lovely.
There's more goatmen waiting for them at the barrows, and they're now debating in chat how to figure out how they're going to maximize their attack on them. They're like talking about setting up bonfires to distract them and lure them out and all this kind of stuff. It's like, okay, you guys keep thinking that. They have no idea what's waiting for them. And I won't say anything we're watching.
I'm looking at Halakar's description of the Yogg here. If I was to just put you know how Max Boyvan has his black screen and his head. If I was to do that with my head, I would look like a beholder because my head is large and round and it would appear to be floating.
Dude, you would look like off-brand Wish Holly from Red Dwarf.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so Red Dwarf is this British comedy show that was.
I know. I saw the first series of it.
I have no idea what's going on.
Anyway, their computer is a sentient an AI, and the actor is just in a black shirt with his head poking out on a black background every time he's on screen, and he would look like I ordered a Holly cosplay from Wish.com or Alibaba.
Mm-hmm.
All right.
Anyway, we are here to talk about a specific topic. You'll be glad to know. And it's your favorite topic, Bear. I mean, you told me on stream the other day that effectively horror was rubbish. I mean, compared to superhero gaming.
I didn't say it was rubbish. Wow, that is such a British ability to mutate what other people say into things that make
so much. I've lost so many arguments to my wife.
Yeah, they just do that. They put other words in your mouth. You know, I didn't say that. Well, you implied it. It was implied.
Your intention was clearly this. It's like what?
Between the lines, clearly is what you meant. You know,
it's because it's the accent. It comes across with some gravitas as well.
Gravity. You're right. All right, let's get on with it.
Our first topic tonight. We are continuing with last week's theme of horror, and we had 5 topics listed in our chat. And this one here tonight, to begin with, is mechanics to deal with horror and fear.
Hold that, I'm cooking, so I'll be last.
Okay. So mechanics to deal with horror and fear. Now, obviously, we go back to the early days. Dungeons and Dragons, a fear spell, save versus spells, run away. That's all it really had, wasn't it? Oh, morale. Morale.
You've got morale, yeah. You've got that. There's also the roleplay situations of where you can use illusions to cause scares.
Well, roleplay situations are something that they're not really covered by the rules, though, are they? It's covered by sort of the unwritten rule at the table where you play your character. But
the thing about illusions is that they could cause you to die if you believe them, and that could be argued to be dying of fright. You know, depending on
that's a good way of arguing it. It's a good way of arguing it. Yes.
I mean, I've seen that done several times in my campaigns where the players decide, like, okay, we're now going to make use of layers of either senses or different visuals to give off the right insights, such as I had one player make use of advanced illusions where effectively they made it look like they had summoned out a Grim Reaper with a lot of side effects, such as the noise of the wailing dead, the fact that a lot of the crops ground around them looks to be frosting and freezing to its very core.
My point there regarding the illusions, though, was it's illusions were a very specialist field in that you had to have the player and the DM really buying into the power of the illusion. The rules didn't cover them very well.
I agree.
It doesn't have it mechanically, but that's also down to that. This is where like a lot of the, not just the buy-in, but it's also the whole thing of like, you will have to really, give the information of like, this is now happening, and the players will, they should know that it's an illusion. They have to like say things like, "Oh, I don't know, I might be trying to disbelieve." It's like, well, what is there to be disbelieving about? Challenging the players for these sort of things. Equally so, when the reverse is that the players start casting it, you start trying to get the information for like what parts can you look in the chink of the armor. That's what my approach about it. There isn't a step-by-step guide to it, but
the thing to me about basic sort of fear mechanics is the more I play games like Call of Cthulhu with adult players who take the game a little bit more seriously, the more I think you don't need mechanics to force people to act scared, because if the players are taking the game seriously and role-playing the characters pretty much how they would act, they will willingly, as players, lean into it and leg it. For example, two of my characters on Saturday night tried leaping from the upstairs windows of the house because they thought that's what their character would try and do to get away from this horror.
Reenacting
one
Dunwich?
of them. Pardon?
Reenacting Dunwich? That scene where he's in the hotel?
Yeah. And one of the characters failed his climb roll and rolled maximum damage on his fall and died instantly from the fall.
How many stories up were they?
Only the second floor.
Well, did he land on his head?
He rolled. He had 10 or 11 hit points. He hadn't been hurt yet, and I rolled 2d6 and rolled double six.
But it's a second story window.
It's 2d6 for the fall.
That's ridiculous. People, you tell me DIY mechanics for horror, but you have an absolutely absurd falling mechanic where they take enough to kill him if he doesn't land on his head. People jump out of second story windows all the time, John.
It's 20 feet.
Yeah, people jump out of that shit all the time, burning houses all the time. He died? Oh, I'd be pissed if I was the player. I'd be like, didn't I get a roll?
He did roll.
He failed the roll.
He failed a climbing check.
Okay.
He made a climb check to get out the window and failed it badly.
Okay.
The house was all wet, so I said, "Okay."
Badly?
It wasn't a fumble level, but he failed by about 50 or 60 on the roll.
Oh, I'd have just broken his leg and made him a burden to the rest of the players.
But then I said, "Okay, it's two." If he got 10 or 11 hit points and the damage is 2d6, in all likelihood, he will survive that fall. In all likelihood. But the dice rolled double six. So I says, as you fall, you slip and fall, you catch the something jutting out of the wall on the way down, spinning you around, and you land on your head and break your neck.
There you go. So as I said, this would have all been mitigated by me saying, "Did he land on his head?" Yes, would have been the answer.
Yes,
at that point.
yes, he did. Yes, he landed on his head. That's how I narrated it, because of the way the dice came. His climb roll was terrible, and he rolled 2d6 and came out double six. Whereas the other person who jumped was more successful. He had to make a jump roll instead of a climb roll. I think he failed that. No, he passed that, and he took 1d6 damage, and he took 3 damage, sprained ankle.
See, but that's the kind of prick I am, though. I would have broken the other guy's leg or his shoulder. I would have made him incapacitated somehow. So now the other guy has to make a choice. Do I help him, or do I save my own ass? Do I have to be faster than the monster?
They jumped out of different sides of the house.
Oh, dear. You're the worst reporter ever.
I'm sorry. One ran left, one ran right.
Got it.
as they ran away.
Okay, I'll
and
shut
took
up
out
now.
different windows.
Before
And
Sax throws something in my head.
and I'd say, I mean, Roland here was one of my players. Should fear affect decision making itself? Panic can make people do truly silly things.
Oh dear God, yes.
Yeah.
Oh yes.
But I like to trust my players to do that. Roland was the one who jumped and landed and took 1d6 damage and survived the adventure, but had to walk back to town limping without his car because he rammed his car into the house to try and destroy the entity. 15 odd miles in the middle of the night in February in Massachusetts.
It's like you keep adding a detail.
Yes. But no, it was a good game.
And it was
a good
snowing,
game.
and they had a hat.
Uphill both ways.
Uphill fighting sharks.
Quickly built on Bishop's point here. Well, another thing that you can do, to sort of emulate the whole the effect of the decision making is to remove a lot of the details, because you have to make snap decisions when you're in such a state of flight or fight. And if they run, it's just be like, well, you run, you get through a hallway, left, right, left, okay, bam, and you keep track of where they are until they make their save. If we're in a dungeon, for example, and then bam, you're now in another room, roll for initiative, you're in a separate combat now. We'll get back to you later. I was like, what? Yeah. What's happened? What am I fighting? It's like, don't worry about it. We'll get back to you.
Don't worry about it. Don't worry about it at all.
Don't worry, we'll get back to you. It's like, what? You can't leave me hanging like this. It's like, oh yes, I can. Now back to you. So
exactly.
There's other ways you can do that.
Yeah. So games that do have fear mechanics built in. Obviously, 5th edition D&D has frightened and fear. They're two different effects. If you're frightened of something, you can't get closer to whatever you're frightened of. But if you're under the effect of fear, you have to move directly away from it. Now, while I think the difference between the two is fine, it's those sort of mechanics. I like to be able to trust the players to emulate fear. If I was to say to you, your character is extremely scared of this creature, and you were then to tell me I approached the creature with my sword drawn, I'd be there thinking, But thankfully, I think the players I play with, certainly at the moment, they won't do that. They'll lean into it.
Yeah, you can. No, go ahead, Saxis.
The question from a player's point of view: how would you, as a DM, be able to dictate what they are or aren't afraid of?
If something has produced an effect that causes them to be scared.
Right.
But equally, I like my players to try and act realistically. Well, in a sense, if they've just witnessed some entity dismember their best friend in front of their eyes, as if their best friend was a small twig, are they really going to stand there and pull a little knife and try and stick a knife in it?
Well, this is where it sort of goes down to what are the expectations of the group, because what I have seen, at least a lot, when it comes to the D&D games, for example, is mightily heroic people who are daring to go into dangerous tombs with traps, magic, undead, and all of these other things. Whereas in the older editions, it's very much laid out between the lines, so to speak, that these are extraordinarily weird people who goes out of their way to do these things. And a lot of the modern day, or a lot of the current crowd that plays, that's not really what they're there for, unless you as a DM can genuinely hype up an atmosphere where the players will sit and feel some form of threatened for their characters. That's, in my experience, not really a thing. It's got to be something that's, in my experience, you've got to preemptively say, okay, here's what I expect from you, here's what's got to be put in here, so give me some things that the characters won't like or don't like, so on.
Yeah.
There's another mechanical thing, though, that is a lot of systems don't use, but is easy enough to introduce, and that's penalties when your character is scared. So, like, to go for D&D, I'm a thief. I just ran away from this thing that scared the living hell out of me. And I get to a door and it's locked and I'm trying to pick the lock. Well, guess what? You're going to have a penalty trying to pick that because, you know, uh, I, I'm the fighter and I've decided that this is going to be my last stand against this creature, hoping my friends will be able to run away and let them survive. I might give you, a one-time bonus at some point because of your pumped up adrenaline, but I might also give you penalties on certain things because of how afraid you are of whatever it is you're confronting. Any number of things like that. And that's that. I've yet to find a system that actually has that formalized, but it's easy enough for a good game master to introduce that, saying, well, now because you're panicking because of this horror, the horror you saw, you're going to have a penalty for whatever it is you want to do, whether it be,
Check out the stress mechanic in the Alien game.
Yeah,
you'll like it. That does it.
Okay, I've heard of it. I don't have a copy of the game, so I can't say I've seen it, and I've certainly not seen it in action. And I didn't see an Alien game that I could attend at Draconis. So there we go.
Well, that's sad.
No, Saurian's one of the players who got eaten by the globular entity on Saturday.
Which one fell out the window and died?
That was. We go all the way back up. There is, I think, it's a message. There we go. That's this fella.
Understood.
That's that fella. Hi, Brian. And where's Daniel? Daniel was another one who got eaten. Daniel's lurking somewhere. He's cooking at the moment, I think. Yes, he is.
Was this a one-off or an ongoing campaign?
It was a one-shot.
Okay.
And it was strictly a one-shot that had to be completed in that available time because I wasn't available for the next 3 or 4 weeks or so to run a second session of it. So I wanted to get it over and done with in that 4 or 5. We played for about 4.5 hours. So we played. It was quite a meaty session. So yes, I did bring the entity in a little bit sooner than is ideal in the scenario because I wanted to resolve it in a fun manner.
Which scenario was it?
The Cracked and Crooked Manse.
Okay.
From Mansions of Madness, Call of Cthulhu.
Mm-hmm. Go for the windows, Call of Cthulhu.
Yeah. So, I mean, I know you're eating your dinner at the moment, Bear. So I'll hold off because I'd like to explain. I know we mentioned last week's stream something about the stress mechanic in Alien, but
I don't know it. I just know it exists. I've never run the game.
All right, okay.
Sorry.
Somebody mentioned it last week and didn't really go into any. I think mentioned the basics of it, but I think it might be to do with the number of dice you roll.
Yeah, you get dice and stuff, and it can benefit you, but can also harm you. And as the stress builds and builds and builds, then there's a peak point where when that peaks, you're just foobarred.
Is it to do with the extremes, the amount of extremes you roll?
Yes, the tension. It's all this stuff that's building up on your character, right? So it's making you better because you're hyper alert, you're hyper aware because you're getting more and more stressed, and then you cap.
And yeah, if you have more chances of that extreme result at either end. Yeah. I've heard it's meant to be good. It's meant to be.
Listen, the system itself that they're using would make a fantastic horror game system.
Oh, good. So it could port it across just to Call of Cthulhu or any.
It's designed for a horror game. It's designed for a horror sci-fi, a cosmic horror sci-fi setting, no less. So it makes perfect sense. It would work.
It's just I haven't bought it because it's sci-fi.
Yeah. We all know you're set in your old ways there. Go live in the country and tend to your garden.
You are. I be a farmer and I drink my cider.
Ye old gaffer.
So, fear mechanics in games. It could be argued that the sanity mechanic in Call of Cthulhu has a degree. It has a number of fear-related effects in your bouts of madness, but it's not strictly a fear mechanic. Some of the effects you have are flee in terror for 1d 10 minutes, or go into the fetal position for 1d 10 minutes. Involuntary responses.
Well, this is the thing, right? Like working in a lot of the fields I've worked in, I've dealt with very violent situations that are immediately violent and people aren't prepared for them. And there's more than fight or flight. There's also freeze. You know, everyone forgets Tharn. Everyone forgets going Tharn. It's always fight or flight. No, there's also freeze, where you just stand there like an asshole with your mouth open and die, or get fucked up because you're not capable to defend yourself. You're not capable to do anything other than just go as your brain tries to process. So I always think that should be included in a system if you're going to have a fear mechanic: fight, flight, freeze.
Also, could be go berserk.
Well, that's fight.
Yeah, but fight, but go berserk is, I think, it's different to fight. It can be. You might smash things around you. You might.
I don't think people really understand what berserk means. And 99.999% of humans are not going to go berserk. You know what I mean? Like, berserk is a very specific thing, and it requires a very specific type of brain. You can't train someone. Despite what Eric the Viking taught us, you can't be trained to take over the family business of being the town berserk. It's a very specific thing. It's very rare. A lot of people like to think they go berserk, and I've heard many people over there go, "Oh, you don't want to fight me because when I fight, I black out." And I'm always like, "You're my favorite person to fight, because you have no control over anything you're doing, and you're going to discover you can't walk when your knees are popped out of their sockets, and you're a useless fighter lying on the ground now twitching and screaming. So relax." But people have very, very, very disingenuous views of what their abilities are, especially when they haven't been in a lot of fights or they've only been in one or two. I can honestly say for the better part of 10, 15 years, my job was to fight when it had to happen. And ultimately, most people suck at fighting. They just suck at it. And if you wanted proof, go watch some of these fights they put up on YouTube on street fights where these guys are throwing sloppy kicks. They're probably practically giving themselves hernias, right? So if it's a skilled person fighting, one of the points of being trained in fighting is to control the fight, flight, freeze reaction. That's what you're trained to do. You're trained to be focused. You're trained to be able to see what's happening and not just react to it, but actually think while you're doing it. So a trained fighter should have a bonus against fear results because they're trained to deal with panic onset in that hyper moment where all the adrenaline kicks in. I don't think games do that or represent that very well. Now, I could be wrong. There might be an edition of D&D out there where the fighter gets a better save than everybody else versus fear effects. But ultimately, I think that's a very important thing. If you want a realistic horror, you need a realistic reaction as well. All right, Spoon. You guys have seen Dog Soldiers, right?
Yeah.
British werewolf film. You've never seen it, John?
Oh,
you'd love it. And there's a character named Spoon, and he's a little short pistol of a guy. And when he finally gets surrounded by the werewolves in his face, and then he's like, "Fuck it!" He grabs the knife and he just dives in and starts stabbing for all he's worth. And his last words before he dies is, "I hope I'll give you the shits." Like that's a trained fighter who is basically using his skills and accepting that he might die in this situation where everybody else is going to run and jump out windows and fall on their heads and kill themselves.
I mean, I know I've only ever had my my own training put into effect once, and it diffused the situation.
Sure,
because the person who was drunk and annoying us in our shop and refusing to get out of our shop, I think it twigged that I was appearing calm, and I was watching his hands, his feet. Keeping close eye on where his hands and his feet were. And every time he took a swing at me and missed, I just stepped forward towards him. And immediately he took a step backwards. Yep. So all I did was shepherd him towards the door, pushed him out the door, shut the door. Thank you very much.
Oh yeah.
because he was backing away.
The first method of intimidation that cops are taught is to stand there,
Yep.
arms crossed, doing nothing, saying nothing. Just stand there. Don't move. Don't say anything. And that will often intimidate a lot of people.
Yeah, but don't stare in the eyes, and that's a mistake. A
No,
lot of
don't
people
stare in
make.
the
You
eyes.
take
That's part of
staring
it.
in the
Yeah.
eyes. You stare here.
Mhm.
Because when you stare there, you can see the shoulders and the hips, and you can see the movement before it happens, and then you have a chance to react to it. Where if you're locked in the eyes, you're not going to see the kick coming over your head. But that games cannot represent that level
No.
of reality, or they could, but boy, that would be a really weird game. So your fear effects should represent the psychology of the person, right? And then based on their experience and their training, that will help. Take Sax for example. Let's say Sax was an underwater arc welder. Well, you know what they're taught to do? Control their fear, because it's the deadliest goddamn job in the world, and they die a lot. And then they put them in rubberized suits with cold welding, and they send them into airplane fuel tanks to weld seams. You know what I mean? And that guy's in his head going, one little spark and this entire city is gone as this thing goes boom. Well, you can't work if you have that much stress on top of you. So a man has to be able to, or a woman or a person has to be able to control their fear. I find one of the biggest problems with games that have fear mechanics in them is that they're an all or nothing mechanic, which is why I like the Alien idea of building your stress as you go and building your stress, as opposed to it's just, which is what D&D does. And I don't like that.
Yeah.
So in Call of Cthulhu terms, it would be a case of making the extreme success and fumble come closer together.
For which?
In Call
Call of Cthulhu.
in Call of Cthulhu, you've got extreme success and you've got fumble. If you would add a stress mechanic to that, you'd have them coming closer together. You'd increase the ranges for extreme success, increase the range for fumble.
Gore, Gore, which was Goblinoid Games guy, Proctor. He made a hack of BRP called Gore, generic something role-playing engine. And he did a stress mechanic using the sanity rules, but he turned it into a stress mechanic. And then as you're getting sanity loss, you're actually not getting sanity, you're building stress, and it starts to become a negative applier on you. So you could probably apply something like that in Call of Cthulhu, whereas whatever level of sanity they are at would dictate their certain level of stress, maybe. I don't know. I don't play the game. I couldn't tell you.
No. Shame, because that sounds like it's quite good.
Well, give it a try. Play test it. Yeah, Gore. I think it's free if you can find it. If not, send me a message on Discord and I'll fire you off the PDF.
Okay, I'm going to make a note. Gore. Right. There we go. Fear is an emotion, whereas panic is an action.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's good.
Well put, Alucard.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Fawn is the fourth one here, Roland says.
Yeah, fawn or Thrawn, not Thrawn, Tharn. What deer do when they see lights, they go Tharn. Well, humans in a panic situation can go Tharn as well, right? But fawn, yeah, it makes sense because it comes from deer going Tharn. Yeah, there you go, fawn. Beautiful.
Yeah.
I mean,
He's got a psychology degree. That's what.
So is that?
Halakar, psychology degree. That fear is an emotion.
Cool.
Yeah. Well, the other thing is when we're playing horror games, there's actually terror, which is when you're afraid of what you foresee coming, and then there's the horror, which is like what, well, in both cases I'm talking about the characters, what they actually see in front of them. So like going into the unknown where some people have dead will instill terror into you because you're worried about dying yourself. But then when you see the globular entity, gobble up and tear apart your friend, then you feel horror, and both add to your stress. So if you're primed with terror, then getting, the horror to kick in is easier than if it comes out of nowhere and you're not primed for it.
Horror is a weird thing because horror is visceral, right?
Yeah.
Horror has to be visceral. It's not rational. It's not logical. It's a primal primate reaction to something. That's what horror is.
Yeah,
right?
but what I mean is, if if I'm going somewhere expecting something, my reaction will not be the same as if I'm, walking down the street and I see that same thing in a totally unexpected fashion. Simply
Makes sense.
because my mindset is different.
Difference between being suddenly panicked and constantly on edge.
Yeah, exactly. And being constantly on edge will actually change your reaction to whatever
Yeah.
happens. And I say your reaction, but I mean, the character's reaction, because we're talking about games here at the end of the day.
And that's the stress. That's the constantly on edge is the stress mechanic.
Yeah. Which, I'm going to have to check that out. I heard some good about the Aliens game. I just, right now, don't have the money to buy it, but I will definitely try and check it out as soon as I can.
Oh yeah, I mean,
Well, Slan, I'll make you a deal. I'll make you a deal right now if you'd like.
Okay, well, I'll contact you on.
No.
Discord.
I'll say the deal out loud. Would you like to review the game for my channel? Because Free League has forwarded me copies of everything for review purposes. So if you would like, I can provide you my review copy so long as you're willing to come on my channel and review it.
Yeah, we could do something like that.
Contact me on Discord, please.
I will.
Matchmaking.
It's called networking, and it's the most important skill any human being can have in the modern world, other than knowing which way the wind blows.
So, has anyone seen? Lee says here, Alien is a D6 dice pool mechanic. Your character has a stress pool that starts at 0. So, I'm guessing if you roll more dice.
Yeah.
Like we're making this things like skill roll. Oh, here we go. Lee's explaining it all here. Making things like skill rolls. You can elect to push a roll to try for additional successes. But every time you push a roll, your stress pool increases by 1. You add to your stress pool. You add your stress pool to your normal dice pool, so you have an increased chance of success. But it also comes with a greater chance of panicking if any of your stress dice come up as a 1. Roll a 1 on any of your stress dice, you must make a panic roll on table of panic effects.
Panic at the Disco.
Fire at the Disco. And the different results of the panic roll tell you how to roll to play your character and also give some negative effects to other rolls. Okay, so that's the equivalent of losing your sanity a bit in Call of Cthulhu. Similar, a table you roll on. How do you react to this? These hideous goings on. So yeah, sounds good. Sounds good to me. Has any role playing game ever incorporated PTSD though?
What, as in like mechanically?
Mechanically, yes.
Well,
lasting stress.
There are the phobias that you can get from Call of Cthulhu.
That's true, yeah.
So you are able to develop some form of traumatic stress disorder from being on the edge and being exposed to this. I know that in the Warhammer 40,000 games by Fantasy Flight, there's also insanity. The more weird and more crazier things you get exposed to, you start developing tics, and some of these tics can go from being minor things, and they will start to, exactly like there will be things like obsessions, there'll be things like, body language, it'll be beliefs, insisting that, you always see whenever something bad happens, you always see a cockroach like scuttle across for something. But these things will then start building up to becoming, things that has mechanical and roleplay penalties, because now you're starting to have certain what's called aluminum foiled hat level craziness that goes on in your head.
Like my wife with spiders.
It's you can also develop phobias, and there are a lot of these things that can come in, and it's just, at least from the Warhammer games, it's about you start seeing things, you start experiencing things that are otherworldly and that are just that most normal people will not see. And these things take a toll on your stability, because the world as you know it gets shattered, and your baseline for what you consider to be reality shifts but not in a good way. It's not that you adjust to it, it's that your world is now permanently changed. But there's a big part of your psyche that can't accept that. Because that means that you're accepting that you're wrong, but also that you're at the brink of madness. That you're starting to see things, so you don't even know if you can fully understand it either.
Yep. So yes, the answer to my question there is yes. Yes. But yes.
It's also like you can also read that as a statement. Being on edge for too long leads to this.
Yes.
And that is a byproduct.
Yeah, but I asked a question based on that. So yes, and you answered it.
So singular traumatic events can also lead to PTSD. It doesn't necessarily have to be protracted. It can be one event that, marks you forever.
Yeah, definitely. Because
actually, the one place where you do see PTSD is in a lot of modules for certain NPCs, which will be described as having what is essentially PTSD from whatever event occurred before, leading up to whenever the player characters show up in the situation.
Okay.
I agree with George Carlin. We've clinicized and taken the
shell shock
to exactly. Let's just go back to shell shock, which seems to actually, maybe make a better description of what's going on, because this has gotten to the point where it's like PTSD. Now you hear housewives saying, I have PTSD from my kids. Shut the fuck up. You don't have PTSD. You're just tired. Get a nap, drink some wine,
Yeah.
Good God.
Yeah.
And when it was called battle fatigue, when it was called shell shock and things like that, people wouldn't pretend to have it if they hadn't gone through battle. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. And I mean, I can't think of a better term for what you get it from non-combat other than neurotic behavior, perhaps. I don't know. Neuroses? Is that the proper way to refer to it? Helicar, you're the psych major. You tell me, man.
Here we go.
Well, yes, it wasn't science, but we at least understood the effect of it, right?
So Lee says in Aliens it's possible to gain a permanent mental trauma. So
cool.
Yeah. The more I'm reading about this mechanic in Alien, the more I like it, and the more I would consider picking up the game, if not to play in the Alien universe, but just to use bits of it in other games, because it sounds like an excellent mechanic. Really.
Think about how awesome it would be to run the Alien universe, and they think they're going to go fight xenomorphs, but it turns out to be Cthulhu horrors. Your players would never see it coming.
But I'd have to put up with spaceships and laser guns and stuff.
Just think of them as wagons and horses. Come on.
Just put it down as just being a very big complex, like a government building. You're in the HMRC. You're having to go through this, and it's now filled with tax forms and aliens. Both of them are terrifying.
If it was filled with tax forms, you'd be making.
I'd be the first to die. I'd see someone who's filled it out wrong and be like, no, and then the alien would get me.
No, you'd be like, let me fill that tax form in for you, Mr. Alien.
Oh, for God's sake. Move on.
Wow. I gotta ask you,
right? Yes, okay.
Like working for Sax, is that nice working for Sax? Because I notice he dictates when you're done talking about something. So we know who wears the pants in this relationship. Is it PTSD? Is that what's happening?
It's project management from my side.
It's all done in jest. Okay.
Burke was a narcissist. No, sorry, and he wasn't traumatized. He was a narcissist.
Really do keep threatening to do a Cthulhu game using this game system. It's not bad.
That would be something I would be very interested in. Free League, if you ever happen to watch any of this stream. Free League, do it. You'll have my money.
Mm-hmm. I'll send them a message. They're awesome. By the way, if you're a YouTube channel looking for review material and product, they are your best friend. Like, I'm not
What?
kidding. They are beyond generous with review material. You just got to be willing to play some of their games there, John. Like maybe Simbaroom would appeal to you because it's fantasy. I don't know.
I've played one session of Simbaroom at a convention. I quite enjoyed it.
All right, what's next on the topic parade?
Oh, okay.
Yeah, you. Sax, what's next, Sax?
Let me get out of the list.
Yeah, thank you.
Go on, John. You might get it before me.
I've got the One Ring. That was Free League.
It was. Yes, it is.
I need to play it then. I need to play it. Right, who's up for a game of that sometime?
Well, do you want to move on to the next, which is the out of character knowledge?
Yes. Okay. Yeah. How do we combat players bringing out of character knowledge into a horror game?
So, to give some background, when I wrote up this topic, I was thinking about many of the games I've had seen or that I've run where players would come in and they would be sitting there going like, oh, I know exactly what this monster is. I know exactly what this is. Or they bring some form of knowledge to the table, which is not something that I can see being derived for the character. And they try to sort of force this in there to help either circumvent the horror or find a good explanation or outcome or way to loop around a problem to minimize effects. One aspect I've seen is that I've seen a lot of players argue that, oh, my character is a jaded person. I am not affected by all of these gory things that you're describing. And using, for example, Call of Cthulhu, sure, you would have seen some abysmal things in World War One, but there are also certain things I would argue that you should be affected by, such as what is the byproduct of seeing the experimentations of crossing humans with the deep ones. You know, these are not things that you can just say,
Absolutely.
"Oh, I'm jaded. I've seen things." Like you've seen the horrors of war. You've not seen the horrors of science. That's a despicable thing. If you want to go, I mean, I'm not gonna. You could go and look at that in your own time, but there are plenty of great. I wouldn't say great, but like very dark things you can pull out from what the science world did to advance any of the fields. Like I'm just briefly thinking of what the early psychologists did. That was not good. Those things were not good. They left people scarred, and that's the mildest one I can think of off the top of my head. Just before we start,
MK Ultra.
MK Ultra, you've got units. It was a Japanese unit in China.
Oh no, the Japanese unit in China. I saw a movie on that 20 years ago that left me scarred forever. That's something else. But my point is that there are plenty of things out there that you can look into. Funnily enough, I used the concept of MK Ultra to make a whole Call of Cthulhu idea where a group of cultists was basically trying to bring out a brand new perfume which would initiate a sort of feral initiation within all of those who used it, and the plan was to make use of a big event to sort of spread this to basically have an entire town just devolve into just anarchy, just bring them down to the lowest level of caveman mentality with just absolute bloodlust. That core concept just being derived from these things, and the players having to then figure out the science and the vile experiments that would be going on between it. That's horror enough. You don't need the monsters for that, but the sort of like things were happening. You're lifting the curtains a little bit, and what you see is already scary. Do you want to look more, or you do? Go on, go on. Now think about this. Take that corporate horror and scientific horror you're discussing, right? And it used to be military, now it's corporate, and it just gets worse and worse as time goes on. And add in the Cthulhuid element where the modern corporations are capturing shoggoths and things like that and dissecting them and looking for stuff inside them to exploit. And every now and then one of the scientists kind of and well, it's too bad for Henderson. Let's go get some of those young fresh bloods from MIT now, that type of idea. I mean, you
Yeah.
could really, really dive into a darker place where the horror of man can almost be comparable to the horror of the great old ones at that point.
Exactly. And to bring it back, but often my concern when these are fantastic ideas, my concerns is often where the players then sort of turn around and go like, oh, but I as a person, I now know these things and X, Y, and Z, but they're not playing a character that would come from a similar background or have this. How would we go about sort of keeping that in its reins to prevent what could be, a
I mean, yeah,
breaking of immersion.
In a mechanical sense, I mean, it seems to be quite a natural progression for me for players who think mechanically to start understanding the mechanics of the game and manipulating them to avoid the horror. One of the reasons why I enjoyed running that Call of Cthulhu game on Saturday is all 4 of the players, I think they played a total of 2 Call of Cthulhu sessions between them before we even started. So they didn't know them. They don't know all the mechanics, which meant they played a lot. It felt like they played a lot more naturally. So my answer to that is play with newbies. But that's not the answer. Not the answer you want. But I think.
Well, no, it is a answer, and especially for a game like Call of Cthulhu, there's a huge benefit for playing with newbies. What I effectively try to do is that I know all the characters that will be in the game because I play with them. I've seen them being made. I've seen them being acted upon. I often, when I look at some of these things or some of these questions getting popped up, I'll turn around and simply say, well, how would your character know this? How would your character come to this? And I would make them take me through this while I would also counter by saying, well, your character is of this background. How will they have come across this? Go through the actual steps, which will force the players to effectively have to think a lot more deeply about the characters and some of the background. A quick example being in my second edition D&D game, I have not made dragons a major part of the campaign. It's just not been a big relevant part. And one player began making discussions of like, oh, this dragon is X of X color, which means X, Y, and Z. And I had to pump the brakes and say, you don't know this. You don't know how any of this works because this is not documented. There are not enough dragons in this world for us to have a concrete idea that to tell a green and a bronze dragon apart by skeletons alone. You don't know this. Exactly. And throughout the entire campaign, I've not made this a major thing because it's not a major thing in this campaign. It's not a major thing in this world. So, ergo, that stopped a player from bringing his real life memorization of the monsters manual into the game. And equally so, I've been on the receiving end because I would be playing a game of Stars Without Number where I would bring my shipping and logistics and all of these things into the game, and the DM just said, your character is a pilot, not an accountant. You deal with the mathematicals of the ship. You don't deal with the accountancy of what comes in for the liquidations and all these other things. So Oscar, control yourself. It was like, yeah, that is fair.
But numbers and spreadsheets are
I put myself up. I made the wrong character. That's the symbol of it. I made the wrong character. But
the gripping role-playing reality of actuary tables.
I'm sure I've shown you what I do for some of my D&D games with factions and everything going in there and translating the game wealth into what have you. My point is, from a DM's perspective, it's good to know what your players are playing and how to prevent them from just going off the rail with what they know as a person. A long way around. I sort of answered my own topic.
Good. What's the next one then? Since you've answered it.
Sometimes I just need to be left alone in the corner to just ramble. It's normal.
Good
My wife
God,
does.
yes.
Good
God, I know that feeling.
For me, the simple answer is, as you did, as your DM did, to sort of prompt your players to remember to try and think in terms of their character, because certainly I'm always going to come back to Call of Cthulhu because that's my main. That's the only horror game I've really know much about. The players will go into that game, into the scenario once they've got to grips with the system, knowing that it's an investigation. The answer is not going to be mundane, though. It's not going to be a little old lady putting mushrooms in the dead person's tea or something like that. It's going to be some tentacled entity that has crawled out of the dead person's toilet and sucked his insides out, more likely.
A little old entity, please.
Why is it the little old lady putting mushrooms that she harvested off the tentacled creature that lives in her basement in the
Well,
tea?
there we go. There we go. Yes, the little old lady is the one who grows the tentacled things in her basement, and yeah, you could do it that way. Yes, but there will. I would say there will always be a Lovecraftian twist, something like that, behind almost every Call of Cthulhu adventure. And players go into, once they understand Call of Cthulhu, they go into that knowing that what's done it, aliens. Basically.
Well, there you go.
But they've got to portray their characters as not knowing that, unless they are playing a character who is up on the Cthulhu mythos, in which case that character is on the verge of insanity.
Mad as a hatter.
Was that Bear?
I said mad as a hatter.
Yeah. So new characters.
Hell, that is the starkest chamber I've ever seen. That you are an accountant. That is just stark behind you, man.
Where's mine's a mess?
That's what I'm.
How's your soul, man?
See if I can. So that is something that I like to throw out at my place when I do Call of Cthulhu. Don't know if it's visible.
What's that say? Something black?
Annie, it says Annie Black. I'll see if I can bring up. Basically, it is the sign of when if the scientific player in the group starts putting some of the blood under the microscopes, showing them a picture of the small, blood cells suddenly turning around, and there's an eye looking back at you. That's something that's, if you're playing a scientific character, that's horrifying. Just suddenly realize that, the very organics that you're looking down upon has now stopped and is looking back at you like you are the one being observed. When you're trying to make
the idea of looking at bacteria and they start to form the yellow sign, like they would just be.
Oh yeah. They start doing things like that, something that's just so unusual.
One adventure I ran recently, it had various gory bits in it, but the single thing that I think creeped my players out more than anything was when a swarm of locusts landed, and I described them all as perching on whatever surfaces were available, sitting there silently, and and if they looked at a locust, they would see thousands upon thousands of eyes. The locusts were just sat there watching them.
So it's the birds,
but only them, not anybody else. No, not interested in anyone else. There were lots of other people there, but the locusts were only interested in the player characters. And all these little tiny beady eyes from every surface, all the lights flickered off the eyes of the locusts. That's all they could see for hundreds of yards around. Carpets upon carpets of them staring at them. It's often little things like that, just little oddities. Like I say, an eye looking back at you.
That's why I don't run horror. That's why I don't run horror. I should.
Why? You don't like the little oddities?
Because I'm going to tap into a part of my brain and unlock some things that I've fought very hard to put back in their boxes.
Some
Oh.
of it can. Sometimes you just can't get really real with some of these things, and you start suddenly saying things where it's just like, "Oh, that we just went into down an alley where I don't go down there normally, but here we are.
Yeah.
Part of our psyche has just been unleashed. We hope that no one picks up on anything that has just been said."
Mhm.
Well, Halakar has asked this. How much do you pull from other sources for your games? I mind things from video games, books, movies, other games, you name it.
I mean,
Um,
steal liberally.
Yeah.
Steal liberally, steal often,
Yeah.
steal without shame. I see no problem with this, because if you have to sit down as a DM and you have to make everything fresh and new and so on, well, that is so difficult these days. There's nothing wrong with just taking something like Silent Hill, or taking something like The Room, and from many other horror games or movies. You can just take it out there and enjoy. I'm currently being, well, not forced, but my friends are encouraging me strongly to play a game called Demonologist, which is just phasmophobia or ghost hunting. I don't do well with jump scare games, but I'm still going through it. It's giving me some good ideas for how you can have ghosts be different, how different parts of the ghost can be, treating differently with different effects that will identify them.
That's why you need Tobin's Spirit Guide. And that's my problem. This is the other reason I can't run horror, because of my players, 2 of them are just going to reduce it to Ghostbusters as fast as humanly possible, because that's how they handle being scared. You know what I mean? Like, it's just, some people want to play horror, some people don't. And the happy ground between the two, Buffy the Vampire Slayer, the role-playing game.
That's
Because you can have the comedy where the people that are uncomfortable with the horror can get into the comedy bit of it a little bit, but then you can have the really dark horror shit, and that allows them to have the back and forth at that point in time, and they tend to settle into it better. Whereas when they play Call of Cthulhu, one of them bought dynamite. You know what I mean? And then when the things start coming, he's lighting dynamite sticks and throwing them at the unnamed horror. It's like, Jesus Christ, that's the part
You can
mind.
You can throw all the dynamite. I mean, after all, you can also harm yourself with that.
Oh yeah, absolutely. But the point being is that the DM who was running the game, or the keeper, was not prepared for that player. This is a high school.
No.
He was just not prepared for him, and he just lost his mind when that happened. It's like, well, dude, you got mad at him for taking too long with the equipment and said, spend $50 and write down what you think you need that's reasonable from the list, and he picked dynamite. Don't blame him,
Yeah.
Oh, Brian, dynamite would not have helped you on Saturday night. Oh, no. No.
He's fucking with your head, Brian. Don't let him get inside your head, man. That's what he's trying to do. He's trying to get in your head,
Listen,
Brian.
you always need dynamite. And when you don't have enough dynamite, you need more dynamite, followed by gasoline.
Car batteries and copper wire. That's all you need, okay?
Listen.
Oh, shit, I'm on a list. Damn it.
This thing had a weakness, and explosives and fire were not it.
Were tears it by any chance? Was
I have
crying
a paper
begging
clip.
its weakness?
Was a building on the list of weaknesses? I'm sure I can find a way. We don't need guys with the Chrysler Tower. What?
Have you seen the Chrysler building? That occultist designed that thing, man. That thing was madness itself.
That is just pointed up there. It's just like, come to us. I was like, that's another good idea. Architecture, because I think I did that in one of my Warhammer games. I had buildings be placed in a way as to generate the symbols needed to conduct what's it called? Rituals, where events would be taking place at specific points. And for those of you who watched Full Metal Alchemist Brotherhood, you will also know about, no, we need to do the big ritual. So along the borders of this country, we're just going to do terrible shit where hundreds and thousands of people will perish just so that we can initiate a ritual to do all of this. And you can do the same thing with that. Again, It's a wonderful way, and you can reverse things around. Now the players who like, engineering, geography, all these things, just lay out a nice little map and let them draw the circles. Like things happen here, now things happen over here, things over here. And why are we drawing a pentagram? Why is it making a circle? Why are we all shouting "Yay, yay, Fatah Cthulhu"?
I do like the robes, though. That was a good call. Yeah. Well, I mean, that's Ghostbusters, right? I mean,
Yeah.
people forget that when they watch a movie like Ghostbusters, they forget that the horror of Ghostbusters is legit occult stuff.
Mm.
It's not like they just get goofy. Like, I mean, he built that tower, that building, to conduct the thing, to open the portal, to bring Gozer the Gozerian through, It's very Cthulhuid, actually.
Yeah. It's definitely, and it's also like if we stick with the topic of Cthulhu, isn't there a creature that travels through paintings to attack people or to drag people into another realm? I might be making this up because I've seen it in one of the Cthulhu video games where there is a monster that has been painted and it comes out during the crisp night and it takes people with it back into the alternative world where it is scary.
I don't know.
There's a couple of movies with things coming out of paintings, but they're not really horror movies.
So this has always been my theory on the attack on. Warning, trigger alert. Okay, I'm going to talk about 9/11 now, but not in the way you think. I always thought afterwards when I thought about it, I said, what if this was like the biggest Cthulhuid ritual that failed because they weren't able to breach the walls of the Pentagon with the missile attack, and sadly at the end of the day, they sacrificed all those lives to give the energy to break the portal and bring forth whatever lives in the middle of the Pentagon, but it just failed at the last second. That's
when the Pentagon is there to contain whatever evil creature it contains.
That's
cool. Didn't break,
I like that. Yeah.
Delta Green now.
Yeah.
We're trying to contain it.
Yeah. So Lords of Illusion is a very good movie for horror stuff, especially when you get to watch the director's cut, which has the really weird cult shit in it put back in, which is really cool.
So you've got Ihort, for example, living beneath the center of the Pentagon.
Or, whatever.
You could have a number of things.
Narlethiotep, the Great Cthulhu. I don't give a shit. Something that's going to eat the fucking city.
Bob the Builder is down there. He's coming back.
Wreck-It Ralph.
Anyway, to answer Halakar's question, I tend to run pre-prepared Call of Cthulhu stuff, but I do try to. A lot of the twists in it just come out of the depths of my mind.
British mind, just say it. Council planning has destroyed your entire country's mental state, sir.
Oh, yeah. So, but it is something that sort of I've got better at over time. I look back to some of the first Call of Cthulhu adventures I ran, and I was very robotic and mechanical. And as with any game, the more you run it, the more you experience the way different groups play and the way different scenarios pan out, even the same scenario panning out in multiple different ways, the better you get, the smoother you get. And the key to, for me, running a horror game is pace. You've got to let them have time to think and stew at the right moments, push them into quick decisions at other right moments.
Yeah, there's nothing. You could just pointing at the player and be like, "You have got to make a decision. Snap, snap." And just. So I mean, at that point, the player themselves, if they're not ready for it, they'll be like, "Oh," they might freeze up, and as you continue to go, like, "Come on, it's happening, 5-4," and then they will be shouting like, "Oh, do this," or you at least present them with some options if they freeze at that point, because as a GM, you've got to be, ready for eventualities like this.
Come on, fight or flight.
Well, that's a little bit too simple. I'll turn into a cubicle.
So I just sent you guys a link in the private chat here on the StreamYard. It's for an analog horror wiki of this thing called the Monuments Mythos.
Ooh,
And the
yeah.
Monuments
Okay.
Mythos is a fantastic YouTube series where the guy posits there's this whole Cthulhuid level thing going on with various monuments around the United States of America, like the Statue of Liberty and Mount Rushmore and all that kind of stuff. It's absolutely
Okay.
fascinating. So I was thinking about this as I walked away after saying my point joke about council planning. But what if Britannia, right? Britannia, the concept, the ideal of this woman, is actually an elder creature. And everything that is done from your bizarre roadways, your M35s and all that kind of stuff in the UK to your council planning and your fucking endless goddamn roundabouts and all that kind of
Have
stuff.
you ever been to Milton Keynes?
I've heard of it. Okay, I've seen it. The one that has roundabouts in the roundabout. I get it. What if all of this has been done to lock Britannia in place and take her power? And it's all based out of the city of London. Because what do you see when you walk up to the city of London? What stands right at the entrance to the city of London? Egyptian obelisks.
Ooh.
You're welcome. My pleasure, John. You can run with that. I look forward to seeing that game when you run it.
Oh. Anyway, welcome to the stream, Daniel. You played in my Call of Cthulhu game on Saturday. Daniel?
I think I shocked his mind.
Foam is starting to come out of his mouth.
I just looked up this monuments of mythos. Yeah, I've watched a few of those. They were good.
They're
They
dark.
they are dark, and they look like genuine. Some of them really just look like, okay, someone is just standing there with a mobile phone or old camera, and then it builds up that tension, and then at that very very last moment you see a demonization of what it is that you're looking for, or you're listening to an audio of something. I remember listening to the Statue of Liberty and what that purpose was, and I was just thinking, oh good God, that is
So the Washington Monument is a phallic symbol because it's an obelisk. It's the world's largest obelisk, and the obelisk is the symbol of is it Horus's cock? I think it's Horus. After he gets reassembled by Isis, but he's missing the penis, so the obelisk is put in its place.
I didn't know that.
Or is it Osiris? I get my Egyptian shit mixed up. But yeah,
Osiris was the god of the dead, wasn't he?
Well, which one was the husband of Isis is all I need to know. Was it Horus or Osiris?
I don't know.
Oh, we're going to go with Osiris.
Yeah, well, that's the one whose penis, after he gets torn apart and she reassembles him, that's what's missing. So that's what the Egyptian obelisks represent, is his penis reaching up to heavens, So that's what the Washington Monument is. So yeah, there you go. But that's the thing, right? When you don't even need Cthulhu for this. When you start looking into all of this architecture from the 1800s that was spreading all across the world, you find the most insidious, crazy shit, like all the pentagrams of the street layout in Washington, D.C., or the streets that make a pyramid, and then the streets make an owl sitting on the pyramid. And like it's there. It's in the map. You can see it. It's fucked up, Well, use that. Use that to your advantage. Why are former parts of the British Empire obsessed with Egypt? Use that. You know what I mean? Like, that stuff is great horror because it's tangible. It's stuff you can show them real world pictures of and let their minds run.
It's some good ideas here. Yes. Yes.
This is
Hello,
why I don't run horror games, because I go down these roads and I do the research and then I'm just disturbed for the rest of my life.
I don't do the research. I just make it up as I go along.
Well, imagine what you could do with that creativity and the research, John.
Just take a moment. You're a player, and you're now being told that this city you've been investigating into, you're starting to draw things out, and then the DM brings you a map of the things, and then there are 1, 2, 3, and all these other things. You start doing, connect the dots, and you start seeing it. There is the what's it called, the pyramid. There is the owl, And then you go like, oh, let's open up Google. And then we go there and it's there in real life.
Oh,
You as a player are now sitting there and you don't know whether this DM that you, or the keeper that you're playing with, is genuinely into the deep waters with tinfoil hats and believing that the lizard people is ruling our world, or whether this guy is just an absolute genius who's gone into a very different field of insights and is now giving you something that you had never seen before, and you don't know which one it is. Which one will terrify you more, John?
And this is why Bear's on that list he keeps talking about.
Yeah. I got on the list early in life, somewhere around college. But
Bear's collecting the list like people collect Pokemons.
yeah.
Gotta be on the ball.
All of this I learned about because I had a friend who is now sadly gone insane, which is ironic given that he is a complete Cthulhu guy, and he was our keeper in high school for Cthulhu, and he was a genius, PhD in the history of medicine and all that kind of stuff. And sadly, he's lost his mind. He's completely become like a paranoid schizophrenic now. But when he was rational still, he got me into all this stuff because he was researching it. You know what I mean? And it's just,
And there's
it's more
something.
horrific than-
Yeah. But there's something. There was because some people will say, like, if you look at the placement of these, ancient structures that were built, it shows like this, that, and the other thing.
The old equator,
all sorts of stuff
Younger
like
Dryas
that.
equator. Now you're
There's a
getting
whole
into
bunch of
weird
different
shit.
ones, but somebody proved something very similar by looking at the locations of the stores of some pharmacy chain in the UK, and they said, like, it's all lined up perfectly, and it shows this and it shows that, and it's just to prove that we have pareidolia like crazy, because that's what we evolved for.
I would agree with you.
No,
except for this. I firmly believe those fucking pharmacies did that on purpose. It's not pareidolia. I believe most pharmacists are fucking insidious occultists, and they just refuse to tell us about it.
But my point is, if you can find any pattern in a mundane happenstance of modern day life and you include it in your game, it can freak your players out.
I mean,
But you got to put up the board with all the pieces of yarn behind you connecting things. Otherwise, what's the point?
Oh,
yeah, definitely. Oh, that's people. Sorry, we've got standards around here. Got to have the yarn. It's got to go across the room. No, but like, on the very same point, like, well, these things are fun to look into, and I do urge people to do it with, a healthy level, not to go into, the point of where it becomes an obsession.
Yeah.
I speak mainly from experience, as this I have also been in this side of the pool where it gets very deep, and I've had to thankfully get myself out, and I have forced myself to now live in absolute ignorance because I don't want to go back in there. You can find some very deep level things. And it will bring up questions, but they're great for games like that. But you've got to be willing to keep a healthy distance.
If I may recommend, there is a channel on YouTube called The Y Files, and he talks about a lot of these topics. And what he does is he breaks each episode into two sections. One, he tells you all the myth, the legend, everything. And then two, he explains to you the stuff that's been debunked, or the stuff this is bullshit and this was found in this book here. And then so that way, he sort of puts your mind at ease. And then every now and then he gets to one where it's just like, yeah, we don't know. You're just like,
the name of the channel again?
The Y Files.
Y Files.
Great channel.
Right.
Awesome channel. So
Daniel.
The one he did that got me excited, Daniel, was about the Grand Canyon, where there's this entire series of reports from the 1800s about these guys finding caves in the Grand Canyon that they went into and were finding Buddhist statues and all this kind of stuff. And of course, the Smithsonian has completely denied any of this is true. But all those places where the people said they found this stuff in the 1800s are now forbidden entry by the Park Services of the United States of America. You're not allowed to go into those caves, but you can see them from the Colorado River when you look up.
Yeah.
Why aren't you allowed in there? Like that's the stuff you want to play with. You want to get into that and fuck with your players' heads with that stuff. Yeah, that's the guy with the goldfish. Yeah, hecklefish. But it's
Daniel has joined us.
Yes, Daniel. Hi.
Yeah,
Daniel's joined us.
Been
You
busy
play-
trying to get the wood stove going and stuff like that.
You played your first. You played in your first horror game on Saturday.
Yes.
So, what did you think?
I loved it. I had a blast. It was a good time. Horror, like you guys have. I've been lurking since the start. I just had to make dinner and crap. But the hardest part with horror, and yet you can apply penalties on your players. I like John said the whole save or run away. That's kind of crappy. I never liked that rule either. But implying a penalty, yeah, you can stay and fight, but you're going to be -2 or whatever percentage. And I like the one, who was it said about like you're the thief trying to get out, the door's locked, and you're kind of shitting your pants and can't work your lock picks. The main thing is, in my opinion, you need to have good players that are going to play the situation properly.
Yeah.
Like, not, well, I'm just going to go in there and kick ass. No, as a real person, you be shitting your pants, have piss running down your legs, and running out the door. But you have to have humans that are going to play into that. Know what I mean?
Because on Saturday you played sort of the rough and ready hobo character.
Yes.
And of course, he's lived on the streets. He's seen and done a few things that people wouldn't be proud of along the way. And one of the moments I did quite like was when Nosorian, his character, froze at a key moment. And he was the only one who was armed with weapons. And he dropped his gun. He just froze and just dropped his gun. And it was Daniel who tried to crawl down the stairs, put his hand into the goo to fish out their only weapon.
And I did not want to do that.
you shoved your hand into the gooey entity to try and pull out that weapon. If you'd have known the mechanics of the game, I think certainly younger players, less experienced players, if they'd have known the mechanics of the game, would never have attempted that. Would never, ever attempted that. But I saw it as a really good desperation moment. It's our only decent weapon.
Yeah, exactly. Actually, even in real life, I probably would have done that. Honestly, I wouldn't want to. And, you'd be terrified, but you need that weapon. So you got to go get it.
Yeah.
And even in like our Saturday games, I probably shouldn't, but I designed the characters around what I would do in real life. And I would have done that even though I would have been like, oh my God. But if it's for your friends or family, what are you going to do? Are you going to leave them or are you going to try to do something?
For one of the characters who had already left you, had already legged it.
Yeah, I know. Yeah.
I just want to say, Bear, your background looks amazing. If you were to hold your arms
that's
up now,
cool.
Like that.
Mm.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. See what that is.
Bear, what was that guy's name again?
Which guy?
The one you were talking about on the
Y files?
My files?
I'll type it in private chat.
The Y, WHY.
Y, okay. All right.
So where were we? Where were we?
I think we've just exhausted the two topics that we had left from the last stream. So I think it's more or less like down to whatever we want to bring up that enhances the horror for when we run, or good ideas in general, spitballing, so to speak.
Yeah.
Because what do we do to initiate horror? Like, do we we all know we have to start at a good pace to build it up. I think that's what we all agree with. But what's the routine that you go about to sort of get the players into the atmosphere, to relax into it? Because everyone has come in with the tense. Go on.
Ran a chill campaign in college for two guys, my buddy Brent, my buddy Corey. And Brent played this guy, Dr. Russell Manning, who was a University of Paranormal Sciences at the University of McGill in Montreal. And Corey was this guy who was this ex-Vietnam vet that was a friend of his. We met through their mutual investigation network. And their first adventure was one of the students coming to him and saying, "Hey, I've inherited my grandmother's house in this small town, and I think it's haunted. Would you be willing to come and check and see if it's haunted?" And he said, "Sure." And he put together a little team of students, and they went down with all their equipment, and they set it up. And I kept it normal, real, normal.
Yep.
Nothing. Just got them real comfortable with everything. And then, one thing at a time, over the sessions, one more thing after one more thing after one more thing, until the horror was what they expected. And as a result, they were terrified. Like, the players were terrified to do anything because they knew something. They believed everything was going to turn into some horrific event for them. Most of the times it didn't. So that the times that it did, it really hit home, you know? But I think starting from a normalcy, a base of reality, is what really will bring it for you, because then they relax into it. They don't feel like, no, this isn't scary. And then you introduce the scary.
Yeah.
I think that's where it helps to be running a game in a world that has a high degree of verisimilitude, and a world that feels very mundane. Because I think it's very hard to pull off horror, for example, in a traditional fantasy setting. Because, as we said, players go into that feeling that they are the heroes. So there's a very, very different expectation. But certainly in Call of Cthulhu, where all of the settings are based on, well, not all of them, most of them are based on the real world. I say the Dreamlands isn't remotely set on the real world, based on the real world, but all the main settings are based on historical time periods. It allows you to develop the mundane side of things.
Yeah.
And describe those mundane bits and pieces.
Yeah. Well, one of the things about horror is that, unlike the other genres like fantasy or science fiction, those other genres, they're defined by what's in the story, what's in, like, oh, there's rockets and aliens and laser guns. That's science fiction. There's dragons and elves. Well, that's fantasy. Horror is about what people feel.
There's
when
a bookstore.
consume
There's a restaurant. There's an apartment building that's been condemned. Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Horror is.
But
there's
another genre that's also about what people feel, and that's humor.
True.
Because that's about what makes you laugh. It's not about, the content. And you can use humor in small doses at the right times within a horror thing, because it'll relax the players just before you hit them.
Yeah.
It's because that makes it even worse. Because, we're talking about ramping up the tension. And then if for the players, you can like deflate them just a little bit and they think, okay, we're okay. And then boom, the next worst thing shows up. It can help make it worse for them in terms of the horror.
So I think it's basically saying it doesn't work if it's a constant barrage. It doesn't work.
Yeah, well, exactly. But
unless you want to
turning it off and yeah.
I mean, on Saturday, the players were just exploring a house that appeared to be deserted, apart from a raccoon that jumped out from under a bed and quickly made them jump for a moment. But every so often, every time they did anything to the house, there was a little sort of shudder in the walls. I just describe it as the walls. It's a shuddering from the foundations, a shuddering running up the walls. Nothing more than that. And they were exploring. Then they were happily just sort of poking around the upstairs rooms, wondering what was going on. Daniel, did you expect when you went downstairs to be greeted by the body of the person you were looking for floating in a mass of goo?
No.
There you go. There you go. They simply said, "Okay, we're going to go back. We'll go back. We'll go back out. We'll go out now. I think we've done enough for tonight." So I thought, "Oh, well, okay." So you're heading towards the front door? Yeah, we'll go back through the front door, back to our car. Okay. And that was the moment. Because they had pretty much settled into. They were going to be comfortable. They were going to go back to town, have a nice night, and whatever, and be safe and comfortable away from this spooky old house.
Yeah.
That's why I threw it in at that moment. Plus, we needed to wrap up the session.
Yeah.
It's the subtle things, right? Like one of my favorite all-time horror films is a movie called The Changeling from 1980, George C. Scott. And there's no gore. There's no demon. There's no big battle with the ghostly figure at the end. But there are moments in it that will just set your hair on edge. Like, for example, he's already come to terms that there's a ghost in the house and he's investigating it and he wants to know what's going on. And he hears this thumping noise and he looks and it's his daughter's ball, and his daughter died at the start of the film, comes bouncing down the stairs, and he gets mad and he's had enough and he grabs the ball and he runs outside and he gets in his car and he drives to a bridge in the middle of the night and he throws the ball off the bridge and he drives home and he opens the door and the ball comes bouncing down the stairs.
Yeah.
And it's wet. And that's the piece that makes it. Not just that the ball's there, but that it's wet. Proving that he has no power over this. And it's just, that's horror. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
That's horror. Not, bleh, that's not horror. That's just panic. That's just, jump scares are boring, you know? Throw a cat at the guy and move on. Yawn. Give me horror. Give me the stuff that gets in my head. Then when I go to bed at night, even though I don't believe in ghosts, I tuck the blankets under my feet anyway, just to be, you know?
Yeah. When the cat accidentally knocks something off the shelf and you suddenly jump out of bed.
Dude, I got 2 of them. Are you kidding me? My nights are things that go bump in the night, please. I'd almost welcome a ghost at this point.
Yeah, I don't know how many times I've had to get up, grab a flashlight and a pistol, and go looking around the house, and here it was the dog knocking something over.
That is so fucking American. Grab a flashlight and a pistol.
Yeah. but the thing is, you don't know if... See, that's the problem. You don't know if it's a real situation or if it's the dog being an asshole.
Yeah.
Thank God it's always been the dog or the cat being an asshole.
He fell over.
I don't want to have to deal with the real situation, but that's what... And then I'm up for 2 hours till I can relax.
Yeah.
That's... I don't want to call it horror. It's more than being scared. But not terror. I don't know what term you want to put to it, but you still got to look into it, no matter what.
Oh dear.
Do you really want to know?
No.
No.
All right.
No,
I won't say.
No, YouTube will cut down
That
on
was
us
funny.
way too quickly.
Yeah.
If you really want to know,
No.
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 That is not a number we need to know. No.
I
Sadly,
have
looking
a
at
couple
my-
stories that I have a good friend who has actually had nightmares over some of the stories I have about that. So
Cool.
yeah.
Let's not have those stories then.
Yeah, we won't go there because John will get demonetized or anything else. So.
I don't monetize my Wednesday night streams
No,
anymore.
it
Anyway,
doesn't.
so,
Yeah, I don't do that either. I
That's
totally
not my
don't.
concern. My concern is mainly if they actually strike Geek's
Yes,
entire
that's
channel,
different.
because they can and they will.
Yeah, I know exactly,
Yeah.
and I don't want to
So
do
let's
that.
anyway, moving over to not that kind of horror.
Well, so this is the thing.
Let's
I'm
go for
looking
the
at my
necessary
profile.
horror.
Well,
Yeah.
no,
I'm
my
looking
thing
at
is,
my thumbnail with these hands and everything, and I feel like I'm supposed to read you guys your fortune now or something. What the fuck? I chose a wrong picture, I
Well-
think.
it makes me want to clean fingerprints off of my screen, actually.
See, again, now you're talking about weird shit that only Americans relate to.
All
All right, what's on topic? What's the next topic now? Please get us away from dead cats and dogs, please. Oh, let's talk about Pet Cemetery. No.
No.
Actually, my
No.
one cat is named Church because he looks exactly like the cat from Pet Cemetery, who was named
Right.
Church.
John, give me a topic.
We've done our 5 horror topics.
Okay, let me rephrase the topic and the question for you. Make something up.
Well,
Make something
Right. What are the
so
more
while they're
preferred
making
settings?
stuff up,
What
I
are
just
the more
wanted to-
preferred settings that we want to go for when it comes to horror? Do we prefer to go for more modern, or do we go for a more historical when it comes to it? Because I really much get the impression that fantasy, D&D isn't really the thing that we think of when we think horror. So what's the sort of setting we like to immerse our players into, and why?
I don't care as long as it's something that I can relate to, because I think that's important, because you've got to lay out all the mundane aspects of the world for the horror to work. Just as in, too much fantasy, nothing feels fantastical. I like to lay out the mundane and start slowly and build. But if I'm going to go for a setting, I think 1890s Victorian era Cthulhu for me.
I like, was it Sachs or Bear who was saying about how the layout of the cities, and it's true about DC and stuff. I think that's really cool. That's an easy way, because like whoever it was said, you can go look it up and then you're like, oh my lord. But that fits well in with Cthulhu in that era, because that's when the town was built and so it's plausible. Even it may be true, but I won't go into all that crap, which I think it is. But the people can actually look it up and go, oh my lord. And you're like, yep, there it is. And then, like you guys said, that sets everything else. And that does half your storytelling for you.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So so I know that for you, John, you said you like the 18 sort of Victorian age when it comes to you sort of setting it up.
late Victorian.
Jack the Ripper. Who isn't intrigued by the story of Jack the Ripper?
Correct. Yes. Yep.
I'm bored of that fucking story.
Yeah, that's just
Don't you want to know who did it?
no. I'm
Why
sorry,
not?
but it's an English thing. I'd rather do some other things because I'm more interested in something maybe a little bit different.
Yeah, the Boston Strangler, the Green River Killer, Ed Gein. If you want to get into the horror of humanity, there's far better serial killers since Jack the Ripper, my friend.
Oh,
But that's down to preference. Again, like, so John, you're going because you like Jack the Ripper. You're going about the aesthetics. I often go for the 1920s, but that's because I like the historical things I can pull out and some of the elements I can bring out to play on different aspects. That's what I like to sort of play around with.
I like
I like
using
the-
modern because you can
Yeah.
take away all the shit they're comfortable with. You can turn all of the stuff they use every day in their life against them. Lovely.
There you go.
I didn't expect to enjoy running and playing in the modern era, but having played in one modern game and run two, I thoroughly enjoyed them. I thought they were great. Simply for that reason, you can lean into everything that is so comfortable for people nowadays.
Well, clearly you have a virus, because every time you search that page, it comes up to that weird symbol that's always coming up no matter what you type in for your search. You have a virus. We should clean the thing. Okay, let's clean the thing. Hey, look at that. I'm still getting that. Now it's on my phone. What the fuck? Why am I getting this? Why is this happening? Why am I getting voice messages from calls that never occurred?
Why?
Who are
Why
these
did,
texts from? Like,
why did
that
it show up
shit
at
is
the screen
awesome.
on the
Why
dash?
did my backdrop just change?
There you go. Why is my backdrop moving?
See, these are the sort of things that really gets under people's skin. You
No.
know, the radio changing, people know, but the iPhone suddenly doing these things like that's gonna be a whole different thing. Sorry, go on.
Well, that's the one thing. If I try to, when I'm playing with my family and my friends, they all know about the voices that my daughter and her cousin heard in their bedroom. And I think I explained this to you guys. The pictures we found in a dresser taped to the back of a drawer when we were moving it. I think
Yeah, you mentioned that last week.
and
Yeah.
ever since then we haven't had any issues. So my daughter is a true believer, and she's told all her friends about this situation. So all I gotta do is bring up anything about something like that, and then they get freaked out. And everybody knows about it, and they know it happened, and I know it happened. It freaks me out. So it's very easy for me to get them, I don't know, emotionally involved in the situation if it's something like that.
Slan didn't answer his favorite era to run games in for
No,
horror.
yeah, let's corner him quick.
Okay. Well, I quite like the 20 late 20s, early 30s, because I find it's an interesting period because science was really making a lot of big strides in that time. And at the same time, the supernatural was still taken quite seriously. And that's when like Rhine cards and telepathy and all sorts of things like that were being studied. So you can, yeah, tons of interesting things were still being seriously studied because we, at the time, really didn't know whether there was any scientific basis to this or not. So it was still worth investigating. Whereas if you put something in a modern setting and you want to introduce some of those things, they can get dismissed quite quickly in terms of.
Exactly.
Yep.
That's the beauty of it. That one smart ass going, listen, Madame Blavatsky and her Theosophic Society and the Golden Dawn was all debunked. It's a bunch of stupid shit. And then it's not. And that smug know-it-all has to deal with all that reality crashing in on him. That's horror.
Yeah, that could be great too. Yeah. I mean, I think it's a really interesting period in history in general, and especially like that sciences versus the supernatural was at a really interesting point. And I think that's also one reason why I think we have a lot of the Cthulhu type stories came out at that time, because it was something that had a lot of people.
Are you a fan, Slan, of Hellboy?
Oh, I love Hellboy.
Yeah, because that taps into all that stuff really a lot.
Oh yeah, it does. And what a lot of people don't realize is Mike Mignola actually did a 4-issue miniseries of Faft and the Grey Mouser.
Yes, he did.
You know, before he did Hellraiser. Like, he really knows his pulp stuff very well, and he really taps into a lot of the stuff from that period.
All right. Mage has a topic for us. Crossing genres, adding horror to a typically non-horror genre. Now, I know I go on about not liking cross-genre stuff all that much, but when I look back to how I've run quite a few D&D games, I mean, it may not be horror, but I certainly bring in I like to bring in depending on the tone of the game I'm playing, obviously, but I do like to bring in a few grisly elements from time to time that are associated with the horror genre. So I guess I am slightly crossing the genres to make things a little bit darker than some people would imagine D&D usually is.
Well, we had that one episode where we had people getting gnawed on by rats while we were trying to cross the one pit or whatever it was. That's, if you put somebody in a real life situation like that, that's pretty freaky.
Winston Smith.
I can't remember who died in that. Somebody got their face ripped off or
I
something.
mean, one example is when I opened up the, I ran my face-to-face group through the Slavers series, and A1 is horribly lacking in this description of Highport. So I really sort of laid into it. The first thing the party saw when they were approaching Highport, was a group of gnolls roasting a corpse. It had no arms, no limbs, but it was obviously a corpse of a small humanoid, possibly a halfling, maybe a fat gnome, or if it was human, it would be a child. That's the first thing when they approached. And then they got to the town itself, and they were advised to eat at a certain inn because it was the only one that didn't have on its menu slave meat stew. And this little elements like that, just to make things a little bit darker.
Yeah.
But it made them want to destroy the slave lords.
Yeah. Well, like I said earlier, horror is about how the audience feels when they're reading, watching, playing it. The other genres are about the content. So you can easily take fantasy with horror. In fact, a lot of what we consider horror is actually some form of fantasy. Vampires, werewolves, these are all fantastical creatures. But you also have horror in science fiction, so Alien, for example. And then you can also have horror in the mundane, and I like to refer to Shake Hands with the Devil, which is a great documentary movie about real life horror. The genres I like to mix is actually other genres, not with horror, but the fantasy and science fiction can be mixed in interesting ways.
That's the
I like it when you don't know, but I like it when you don't know. You don't know what the answer is. Is it like some supernatural thing, or is it just an advanced science? And going with Clarke's law of any sufficiently advanced technology is indistinguishable from magic.
Go on, Bam.
So there's two genres that do not mix well with horror. They just do not. Superheroes doesn't mix well with horror. They've tried so many times. It doesn't.
Yeah.
And D&D.
Yeah.
And the reason why D&D doesn't work well with horror is because all the things that are horrific are just abilities that monsters have that you can then have stuff to counter and kill and whatever, right?
Yeah.
So I don't find those two work well for horror. I think most others can.
I was about to say that the thing, like, I've seen like cartoons like Justice League try to bring horror into some of the stories, but ultimately what it ends up boiling down to is the superheroes fighting some form of entity or another and then saves the day, because at the end of most of the case, superheroes is just about, you save the day, comic book logic, that sort of thing. You can probably try to have an experience with a more grittier form of superhero, but it's not the same as Call of Cthulhu or as many of the other games where that's based around.
Because the day cannot always be saved. In fact,
well, not just
I can
that,
shoot lasers out of my eyes and I can lift up a train car. Really? I'm going to be scared of shit?
Yeah.
No, I'm just going to play.
But
Yeah,
the other thing is
who's got the person
in
talking
horror,
in the background because it's creepy as fuck. Whoever's got the person talking in the background, that's creepy as fuck because it sounds like an EVP or something going on behind you.
Speaking of horror.
I'm alone. No,
Oh,
what I was
no.
going to say is the thing about superheroes and a lot of D&D actually is that it's antithetical to horror in the sense that in horror you often want to remove all resources from the players, right? You want to whatever power they could have, whatever weapons they have, whatever, you know, you
Yeah.
want to take it away from them to make them feel the horror. Whereas with superheroes, it's all about having the power. So it really clashes with that goal of trying to remove all the powers and agency from the players, you know?
Why am I not surprised John's the one with phantom women in his house?
Although, to go back a little bit ago, we were talking about how you lighten the situation and get the people to feel good, and then you drop a bomb on them.
Yep.
Okay, we're going to go back to my first marriage. That's a comedy of horror. Oh, wait, horror, not horror. I'm sorry.
I mean, comedy is it is part of horror. Black humor is prevalent in horror games.
Yeah.
It needs to be. Yeah.
And I find some of the funniest moments in our gaming have been just people breaking it up with a quip. I mean,
Yeah.
my group were playing the Blood Red Fez on in horror on the Orient Express, and they've been dealing with these shadowy things stalking the carriages. And the next day they're at breakfast, and they get talking to a Russian noblewoman at the table, at the breakfast table, and she's bemoaning how she is tired of the affair she is having. Because one of the things they heard during the night was opening and closing of doors. It wasn't just something stalking the carriages. There were people moving between rooms, and the Russian noblewoman is having an affair with one of the men on the train, but she's bored of it, and she'll bring it up how will I let him down, that sort of thing. I can't do a Russian accent, and I'll always remember the quip that one of my players came out with at that moment. He said, so you're bored with the relationship, are you? Have you tried anal beads? And the whole table just completely erupted as it would.
Like you do.
Like you do. Yes. It's just the way he just blurted it out to a Russian noblewoman on the train.
Have you tried Fabergé eggs?
Oh, okay.
Why? She was a Russian
Hardcore.
noblewoman. Come on.
Yeah.
Here we go. There again, I don't like pretty much playing many role-playing games which feature the first part of that pairing.
But he's all about the second part, let me tell you. Ooh,
Yeah.
gets a little blue after 10 p.m. Isn't that the cutoff point in the British TV? After 10 p.m., pretty much anything goes.
It
No,
was
something
9,
like that.
9 p.m. I think.
Yeah,
The
that's when the
watershed.
kids are supposed to be asleep.
Yes. Yeah. Right. Yeah. Right.
I saw a horror film.
It
Oh, it's quite a film, I'm gonna tell you.
was a horror film, not
No, a horror film.
But the thing is, May says here, the way some Americans pronounce horror, it sounds just like
Horror.
horror.
Yeah,
Horror.
horror.
Yeah.
Yeah. And you guys say horror.
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 Yes.
And hawk. And dogs. I had a British friend named Rowan. Back in the day. Every time any of us would say hawk or dance, she'd get really arsed off about it. Hawk. It's pronounced hawk. Okay.
Dance.
Dance. Yeah, okay. Dance.
I say dance because
Yeah,
I'm
that's how it's
north of London.
Because that's how it's pronounced.
Yeah, not dance.
There's no W in it. There's no W in the word. But anyway,
There's no R in it either. It's not dance.
Yeah.
It's dance.
Yeah.
dance.
But that's a north-south thing in Britain.
No, well, there you go. So now there's the thing, though. everybody where we live or where we're from, we have horror all around us in our folklore, right? From urban legends to small towns
yeah.
to we have so much we can draw on. Yet we all go back to the same fucking wells. Werewolves, vampires, Cthulhu. I'm suggesting and encouraging look into your local horror.
Yes.
Now that's
Mhm.
a good example, and I had been talking to a person about it. I'm from Warren. I live in Emporium.
Okay, you want to give me
Pennsylvania,
states on that? Because I don't know American towns.
Pennsylvania, north central Pennsylvania.
So is that Ohio River Valley or is that on the Appalachian side?
Ohio River Valley.
Okay, thank you.
Actually, Allegheny River Valley,
Oh, okay.
but north central. But there's this thing going around between the town I'm from and where I live is this spot where they say if you walk it's like 200 yards back into the woods, there's a clearing, and then it gets kind of like I don't know, creepy, supernatural, where like you'll lose track of time, or you might see stuff you shouldn't. You know what I mean? It's kind of hard to explain, but
So
and that's only like an hour from me.
I saw a video on YouTube about this guy who was doing like he didn't do ghost stuff normally. He just did outdoorsy videos, right? Just camping videos and stuff like that. And he winds up walking through the woods and he finds this thicket. And all the trees making a circle around this opening in this thicket have plasticized missing people pictures nailed to them.
Oh wow!
Oh,
Like,
that is.
you know, like
Wow!
what the fuck?
Yeah, that's when you
Yeah.
run.
Well, things to tap into local legends. I'm going to share. I mean, this is horrific in itself because it's Welsh. But
It's horrific because it's Welsh.
Try
Bit
pronouncing
of a
that.
dig.
It's Welsh. Steve. That's how you pronounce that. Steve, if that's right.
Tulwth Teg.
Yeah.
Tulwth Teg. Do you know what that is?
No.
There is a Call of Cthulhu. There's a Call of Cthulhu adventure based around them. And I loved reading that because those are the Fae in Welsh folklore.
Mm.
And because I've spent lots of time in Wales, I thoroughly enjoyed reading that one. It is based on local folklore. Say local, but I mean Wales is 50 odd miles from me, 60 odd miles, but it's an area I knew. So it was nice to run that. And they were nasty little things as well.
Well, I know that at least from Denmark, because again we are surrounded by water quite a lot. A lot of our horrors are either based around the things that you might encounter in the woods, which is quite common. As we have no idea what's going on. I know that trolls were a big thing. I mean, anyone that's familiar with Scandinavian mythology would know that our version of trolls is not like the rest of of Germany, France, or anything. Like our trolls are very nasty. It's the sort of like the more north you go, the worse they become. Like even by like the Danish versions are meant to be playful, but they will still kill you.
Is that why you got banned from Twitter?
They'll kill you in a playful sort of way.
That's hilarious.
John, you slay me. So is it fair to say that most Scandinavian horror and mythos revolves around trees, fog, and water? Is what I've experienced in that.
Yeah, that's pretty much accurate because I know a lot of early on, like as a kid, the sort of thing that we would like learn would be like, oh, you know, sometimes when you go out and you swim and so on, you will feel seaweed, brushing onto you. That's fine, but according to this mythology, I think it was the Vikings, it's not the seaweed. It's actually distant hands trying to grab you, either for the people who are missing life and wants to feel the embrace of warmth, or it is one of the evil sea hags who are feeling a bit frumpty and would like to have someone down there in their caves. Yeah, as a kid, you suddenly look at water very differently,
Yeah.
and you make damn sure that you have got friends
Yeah.
nearby.
Yes.
And
yes.
yeah, that was something to grow up with. Fog was interesting though, because I was told that the mythology is we only have fog when the hags are brewing their potions.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, that was interesting.
And when
So
you're 6 years old and you're told that.
oh yeah, I think I was 5, 6. I was just like, yeah, that. It's just like, oh, there's quite a lot of fog. It's like, oh, that's not fog. That's the hags that are brewing their potions. And it was just like, what the fuck? They must be busy. Yeah, no. Then of course everything that follows with hags, and hags and trolls in Norse mythology, they go hand in hand, so to speak. But I know from my Polish friends, they often bring up Baba Yaga and the crap
Yep.
that she does. That's Eastern folklore is just a whole different thing. I would absolutely recommend that if you want something that is, evil to a different kind.
And I understand that because my mother's parents were German and Polak, so I completely understand that.
Yeah, that's something that gets past.
La
Go on.
Bête de Gévaudan. You guys are familiar with La Bête de Gévaudan?
Not off the
So
top of my head.
this is from France. Okay,
Yep.
it's near the time of Louis, before the Revolution. The Beast of Gévaudan, which is a province in the thing, and it was all about this monster that no one could figure out that was going around and killing people, and they sent down soldiers, and they did this. They've actually made a movie out of it, Brotherhood of the Wolf, in English,
Yes.
French.
Yeah.
That, when you read the real story of what happened, that's good folklore horror.
Oh yeah.
What's the name of
Brotherhood
that?
of the Wolf.
It's the Beast of Gévaudan. I don't know how to spell it in English.
Oh,
How does
yeah,
that
it'll
mean?
come
La
up.
Bête du Gévaudan. Gévaudan. Vaudon. It's hard. It's a fucked up hard word. in
Yeah,
French.
well, it's French, so what?
I'll put it in the private chat for you. You can Google it. That is good horror. You know what I mean? That thing where, like, this is the thing. Like, games where people have supernatural powers they can call upon at whim to defeat their enemies, horror will not work, because they have supernatural powers they can call upon at whim to defeat their enemies. Games where you don't have that, or they're really subtle and therefore not destructive, anything can scare you, right? Anything at all.
It maybe to tap into like what we've seen, at least in the modern day, with the TV show of Stranger Things. When that first came out, the concept of horror, like you are just kids, or you're just following kids who are dealing with a monster that you don't see it for a very long time. For a very long time, you don't see the actual monster. And then when you do see it, it's sparse, and they drip it in until the very end. But you very much get the whole concept of you've got a bike. You're not going to be going anywhere. Like the few kids that can drive a car, they're not going to be driving it anywhere because it's not their car, it's their parents' car. Where are they going to go? The isolation of even within your own community, that can suddenly shrink, and it goes from, oh, we're in a town of maybe less than 1,000 people, we should be all right, to it's just us, like 2 or 3 families, and we can't trust anyone. And yeah, there might be daylight out there, but that doesn't mean anything.
Controversially to that, or contrary to that, one of the best British horror films that isn't really a horror film but is absolutely terrifying, The Wicker Man. You're the outsider coming to the small community that has all this occult shit going on.
That's very Lovecraftian, though.
Yeah, but he stole that stuff. Let's never forget that he stole a lot of the core and then made it more grotesque. But the core is still there, right? Alone Against the Flames, is that the Wicker Man adventure for Lovecraft?
Yeah, pretty much. Oh, sorry, I've spoiled the ending for anyone who wants to play that.
See, now I'm gonna have to watch that movie.
Let's play the Nick Cage one instead. Oh God, the bees, they're in my mouth.
The first one was with Christopher Lee, wasn't it?
Yes. And that
because
beautiful blonde,
to my
I
understanding,
can't remember.
Yeah, because I remember
God, you Brits in the '60s knew how to make women. Let me tell you,
she wasn't British.
She wasn't British. What was she?
She was Swedish, Britt Eklund.
Britt Eklund. I thought she lived in England.
Oh, she lived in England, but she didn't have an English accent.
No, well, okay, fine.
They dubbed all her lines in that film.
Listen, my point is in the '60s you had some fabulous women in your films. What happened?
Oh yeah.
What happened to your country, man?
I think they double her lines in the film because she couldn't.
Did they? I don't know.
Act. I think so.
Possible.
Mm-hmm.
It's possible. Yeah, but no, that kind of horror is awesome. You know what I mean? Like that sort of.
It's also the game Call of Cthulhu where you have to go to Innsmouth and you are the outsider having to investigate events. That's again like the whole idea of isolation. That's a very major thing, and preying on that, especially for players will make a mountain out of a molehill, and they will terrify themselves. And all you just have to do is just shut up, lean back, and let them cook. Because the players will wind themselves up. They will come to conclusions that are so ingenious. You like half of the story can be written itself by just having a frenzied group of players just go at each other.
Welcome to GM Secrets here on Ye Old Geeks channel. It's the greatest GM secret ever. Let your players talk.
Have you guys any of you ever been able successfully use shape changers, i.e. doppelgangers, to get a party? And I know where we're talking about, like 19 or 1890s and Call of Cthulhu stuff, but it still goes into it. You can get like a doppelganger to create chaos in a party.
You know what you can do? You can always, if this is a one-shot or a mini-campaign, having pre-gens and telling the players this is going to be pre-gens, and then you select a trusted player, one that you can trust to do this, and you take them aside and you inform them that they are the doppelganger. Because now you're going to play into the psychology of players. Because it's very difficult for them to break the whole thing of like, oh, I am now talking to this NPC when it is the keeper doing it. Whereas when it is the players talking to each other and one of them is already the mold, that is a great way for setting it up, because now there's going to be doubt about how things are going to be working out. How did the enemy suddenly get to know this? How is the communication being done? It's quite similar to, if anyone's familiar with the not card game, or just a general game like Werewolf or Salem, if anyone's familiar with that, where there is just
I've played a lot of werewolf / mafia games in my time.
Yeah, those.
Lots. Yeah.
And you take that same concept. It's a simple card game. One person is the killer, and the rest of them has got to figure it out. And then they either go to sleep, one person dies, and now they've got to solve it. And that in itself, that can keep people very entertained because they don't know. And at that point, you're just an invisible judge at the background. You don't say anything. You don't do anything. You just stand there.
I've just finished playing an online through message board Simpsons werewolf game in which I was comic book guy. Completely innocent. I got lynched on day 5. They didn't believe me. Kids. Jay Richter, welcome to the stream. No, I don't know about the game, but I have just made a note of it.
Oh yeah, it's very cool. It's a lot of that's down the holler. Down the holler. In the Appalachians, they have hollers. You go down the holler.
Yes, we do. We have hollers.
You got hollers.
Actually,
Ed
the funny
Haley
thing
gonna
is,
get the pumpkin head, Ed Haley.
you're gonna think I'm making this up, but a quarter mile up the road from me is Hollow Road.
There you go, Hollow
I
Road.
crap you not.
My name's
But
John.
I
Lee
live in the
Fenton.
middle of nowhere, so you know.
So if you ever want to look up something fun, look up Kentucky Goblins. You know?
Yes. Yep.
And then there was this really weird fan show made called Hellier, which is on YouTube. Only watch the first season because the rest is garbage. And they tap into a little bit of that, the idea of this Kentucky Goblins. Because those places, the Appalachians, are littered with caves. Insane amount of old mines, caves, you name it. So there's tons of stuff can come out of the dark. You know what I mean?
We have one about 50 miles, not even that, probably 30 miles away. During the it's because of airflow. During the summer, it ices up because of the airflow. During the winter, it thaws out. So in the middle of August, you'll go in there and there's ice on the walls and icicles. And then you go in the winter and it's dry as hell. It's freaking weird. And you could make a whole freaking episode adventure out of that.
Oh yeah. Oh, look up Mount Shasta and the people they see on the ridge, the shadow figures that are seen on the ridge watching travelers walk through the woods. I mean, there's so much amazing horror lore in the United States of America that is just.
Well, yeah.
In Canada, we have one up in the Yukon, the Valley of Headless Men. It's fucked up, you know, but this shit happens, and legend will carry it into a place that's even better.
That's another great thing to just add into the games. And I mean, you can even the eeriness of just unknown, not obstacles, but unknown obstacles or unknown additions to the world. Like you said, you know, statues of headless men being encountered, or just coming across shrines, but the crosses are always found to be upside down whenever you come across them. I was like, what's going on here? Or you correct them, but every time, even if you stay there and look, like just looking away for a brief moment, they immediately spin around. It's like you don't know what's going on. Just the odd phenomena. But I mean, hell, you can even just play around with the very concept of like will-o-wisps or dancing lights.
Yep.
Because that, just think of what you could do with it.
Stuff.
Yeah.
It is. You know, swamp gas. That's real life stuff. Yeah.
It is.
Yep.
And you can use the very same concepts of, again, you know, if you're out, if your group is out in the wilderness and you just have things like that just popping up. And if you do it in places where, again, scientifically speaking, you're not in a swamp, but you see light out there, you'll be thinking that's flashlights or it's some form of lights. Could they be friendly? Well, if they start shouting, they would be alerting all of the different critters. And I'm sure, I know at least Bear knows about, you know, what happens when, you know, the animals who are awake in the night suddenly hear someone shout out loudly that things are going to come.
Yeah. Yeah. Country folk, man, we all know this shit.
Yep.
We all know how to behave in the woods at night.
Yep.
The things you're safe from will run away and hide. Things you're not safe from will.
The things you're safe from will avoid you.
Yeah.
Now, what about the things that aren't natural?
Yeah.
The Michigan Dogmen, the Kentucky Goblins, the Mothman.
Mothman.
You know, there's all kinds of great cryptid lore you can use. This stuff's awesome,
What's it called?
Chupacabras?
Yes.
That's down Mexico way.
But
what is it like? Oh, even just, I remember being read again. Interesting childhood. My teacher decided that we're going to dedicate like this 1 hour a week of reading a ghost story to everyone. Yeah. Yeah, so that was public school back then. But the biggest thing that got a lot of us kids was stories started with the main characters being good to a random person that he came across on a rainy day, allowing her to come in and just have a seat while he drove her, down the road
Yeah.
to take her somewhere else. Turns out that's a ghost.
Yeah. My
Turns out
daughter died on that road on prom night. You couldn't
Oh,
have given her a
better
lift.
better yet, that little woman died in the very house he just bought.
Oh.
Oh, and it gets better because then he does what most people do. He's like, I'm gonna fix things up. I'm gonna do this, gonna do that. Oh, look, there's a well as a part of it. Well, it's an old house. Why is there's a grate down there to stop people from falling down? Why is it missing a few things? And why is it shaped like a cross?
Yeah.
And the more we go into it, suddenly there is the folklore of like way back when in the 1800s, there used to be a wise woman in the area that the kids like to throw stones at. Except that one day they got a little bit too enthusiastic about it, and the wise woman did something that did not end well for the kids.
I was about to bring up the Bell Witch, Cody. Yeah, the Bell Witch is one of those good stories.
Yeah.
Man.
I've made more notes to look up after the stream of this stream.
I only kept
You're
two,
poor
but
players.
yeah, I'm gonna have to go through and rewatch this
Okay.
just cause there's so much crap I want to look up. It's stupid.
Oh yes.
There we are.
Yeah.
This is a part of the horror, though. Like, funnily enough, a lot of these are just like Bear said, it's folklore, it's things. It's some of it is books, some of it is real. I will need to look it up. Or like, for a very long time, Denmark still did witch burnings. We still have a practice in modern day where we burn it's a doll witch, but that practice is still ongoing. To sort of, it's a mix between like the pagan of like, basically we're banishing the light, but we're warning the darkness of winter. We will do this to you. Go on, Bear.
Max, in Denmark, do you guys get the Northern Lights really intensely like we do in some parts of Canada?
No, not in Denmark.
So we get the Northern Lights,
Norway.
especially where I grew
Norway,
up. We
yeah.
get the Northern Lights really strong. And when we were kids, we were always told never whistle when you see the Northern Lights because they'll come down and they'll take you off to the land of spirits.
Yeah,
That's a Native American legend. And it eventually got passed to the settlers, and the settlers kept it alive all through the country. It's like that's cool shit, man.
It is.
Yeah.
It is really cool shit. And
So what if that's the doorway to fucking the planet of the Migos or something stupid like that? You know what I mean? Like you just gotta tap into this shit and use it.
Worse yet, if you whistle when the Northern Lights comes, or when the Northern Lights are shown, the color from out of space comes to visit.
There you go.
Because you give it the signal that it is welcomed. Which, by the way, I really enjoyed the Nicolas Cage color from space. That was a good movie.
Did you see Mandy?
I did not see Mandy.
Watch Mandy. You want to see like insane psycho horror, witchcraft, psychodrama, Nicolas Cage. Jesus Christ, it's probably like the best movie he's ever made. But it's fucking over the top. But it'll inspire you. It'll really inspire you. Whereas Midsummer didn't inspire me. Midsummer bored me. You know what I mean? Like it's the difference in it all.
I mean, I've said before many times, I don't watch horror films because of the gore aspect. But I'll always come back to the one horror film I did sit and watch and I enjoyed was the Blair Witch Project.
Very good film.
It's folklore based, isn't it?
It's the Bell Witch. Used a lot of the Bell Witch in it. Sorry, go ahead, Jones.
If you guys liked the Blair Witch, I just half-assed watched one last week called The Visit. And it's two kids go to their grandparents' house.
Oh yeah. I've seen
Yeah.
that.
Very much reminded me of the Blair Witch,
Yeah.
just because it was always something lurking. You didn't know what was going to happen or when. And I'm going to have to rewatch it because I think I was watching it Saturday morning, so I wasn't paying attention to it. But what I saw very much reminded me of the Blair Witch. So yeah, the visit.
Have you seen Vivitch?
The village, yes.
No, Vivitch.
No.
So it's witch, but they use two V's at the start of the word instead of a W.
All right.
It's about Puritans in America when they first arrived, this Puritanical community, and this witch that fucked with them. Jesus.
Okay. I'm writing that one down too. I'm
It's
getting a lot
good.
of notes tonight.
Mm.
Well, Pumpkinhead.
I'm gonna.
Everybody needs to see Pumpkinhead just once.
I
Just
did see that.
Lance Henriksen's best film.
So that's VVITCH.
Brian, VVITCH, yeah. Brian, that's funny, man.
What?
I did that. I did mushrooms. And I just did Pink Floyd's The Wall. Jesus Christ. That movie fucked with my head.
I had one friend who went to see the Blair Witch, which to me, it was kind of anticlimactic because me, being a redneck American, I'm thinking all the mistakes you're making, why don't you just go away?
Why aren't you following the river? That's the one that drove me nuts.
Yeah.
We're lost.
Oh yeah.
Follow the fucking river. It'll
Yeah.
just lead you to civilization
Well, one,
eventually.
why don't you have a gun? Two, why don't you go to the river, go back to your car? I don't know. No, just run into an abandoned house. But
But that's because none of these characters were starring in Hell No. I don't know if you guys know that.
Yeah.
No.
But no, I actually
it's just like
Blair Witch scared one of my friends so bad she actually ran out of the theater crying.
Oh wow.
Yeah. I mean, don't get me wrong, the closing scene was pretty freaky, but overall, it's just, if we're going back to the horror thing, the way they're doing it, depending on who you are, it is a scary movie.
Daniel.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Did you notice a small detail?
So for
in
those who
Blair
don't know,
Witch
Hell
where
No
they're in
is
the
a parody
house?
of horror films. It's just like 3-4 minutes long, and it's what if people actually had common sense in horror films?
Yeah, exactly.
Let's have him beer.
Hang on.
The
now.
house.
In the Blair Witch, when she's in the house and they're running around the house, there's a little detail that they added that most people miss. And it's the bloody handprints on the wall. We all see the bloody handprints, but our brain doesn't put it together that they're only about 3 feet off the fucking floor. And we heard earlier in the movie about how the kids had their eyes cut out by Rusty Parsons or whatever his name was. So now we can picture, by knowing that, these blinded kids with bloody hands feeling their way along the wall trying to find their way out. That's horror.
Yes, that is. Yep. Exactly. Yep.
These are the sort of details. Like when you bring that into a game, you start adding these things up.
Yep.
We're returning I'm going to sound like Shrek here. It's like an onion, layers. You have to build them up, bring them into normality, let them have just oddities, things. Players will probably just be like, oh, it's just this or it's just that, or they'll be. They've settled into some form of normality after a session or two. Now you can add in, as Bear said, just add in a couple of oddities. Then give them a little bit of information. It's all about building the tension, and it's like a wind-up toy. You gotta do it gently, all the way up there. Like we discussed about stress, tension, and the fear and panic. It's a build-up. It's a response. It's been generated. And these sort of details, the bloody hands being 3 feet off, the fact that the well in the backyard has actually got a metal cross upon inspection. It's just not just metal, it's cold iron that's been used for these sort of things. The fact that you're now learning that there's a potential ghost on the route to your home, and that there is folklore suggesting that the woods used to house creatures or people of abilities that people back in the 1800s feared greatly, but that you think could just have been some form of abnormality or higher insights that the average person didn't have. All of this is now coming right here to your doorstep. These things are adding up, and the sun is setting.
Yep.
Your car won't stop. You are afraid. And when you finally get it to enter and start up, you are realizing you don't have the gas to get going. Why? Because you were scared, or something else came along, or the battery has just died, and you can see your breath as you breathe it out. But it's supposed to be summer.
Yeah, normally I have really good signal, but for some reason I can't get any bars on my phone all of a sudden. What's going on?
Yeah,
That's
it's very odd. And the TV turned on.
Yeah.
Just normal things, I
or,
suppose.
or the cat meowed, but you don't have a fucking cat.
Why is my dog barking at the door?
Is that the raccoons in the attic again?
Yeah.
I thought I patched that hole up with wire. That's how horror needs to work. Oscar's Saxis is 100% right. That's how horror needs to work. Take them to the normal place and then slowly remove normalcy.
Mm.
I actually wish I should have my wife jump on some evening. But actually tonight would be perfect. Because I explained the whole pictures on the back of the dresser thing. But that was happening. We've been together for 8 years now. That was happening when we first got together. So she knows, like, she didn't move in for like 9 months, but I'd be on the phone with her and I'm like, I just saw a shadow.
Uh,
And I was always seeing shadows. And that's the funny thing. We're talking about this, but I experienced it. And I don't know if you guys believe in ghosts or not. I really don't, or don't know if I do or not. But there was shit going on that was just kind of funky. When I'm the only one in the house and I'm seeing flickers and I'm seeing movement, and I'm stone cold sober because at the time I couldn't afford a one beer, let alone a bottle. So I know it wasn't me being liquored up. And even she experienced some things, and everything stopped when we found those pictures. That's scary shit.
mm.
That makes you think.
It
But
does indeed.
even little stuff like that, if you can instill that into your game.
Yeah.
You know, you have an experience once, and then you build up a little bit, and then you can say, okay, we found this, and you can get rid of this situation. But it builds up the tension. Believe me, it does.
So the perfect horror scenario in a role-playing game, usually somewhere familiar, so you can emphasize the mundane.
Like my house.
Get the players comfortable, get them talking to regular people, just chatting away. Get them, maybe they stay in a guest house, they've had a nice breakfast and everything just feels nice and calm, and they're just going out for a little investigation. It's harmless. All they're looking for is some evidence that somebody has been in this property or whatever, because somebody says they saw a burglary or a burglar or something like that. And yeah, you spend maybe an hour or two of the session just going through all of this, just the build up. They might do a little bit of investigation, a little bit of history of the property perhaps, but nothing really major. And they go to the property, and the next hour or so they're just exploring around, and there's nothing. At which point do you suggest dropping in that first hint that something is slightly up.
They're investigating the house. They're in the basement. They're looking at stuff. One of them bumps something. Suddenly a big cabinet moves or something, and then there's a symbol carved into the wood on the wall. There's your first. They have to
Yeah,
stop it and look at
I-
it. What the fuck?
I would leave it like till the very end. Like this, like they've just spent 3 hours or 2 hours and 45 minutes doing all of this, gathering up things, poking things, and then just gives them the one hint, the one place that they forgot to look, or someone just has anyone ever had that feeling of you've looked everywhere for something, you've torn your house inside out, and then there's just something that clicks in your head, and you just almost like on autopilot, you just walk over somewhere, and then you just find it. Like your brain has just suddenly gone, I've known where this is this entire time, but only now have I gone to find it. Just have that immediate feeling, which most people will probably have had at some point. And just tell them, like, you just look up, and then edged into, the on the boards, last Bear said, you do something that you should have done this. You don't know why you didn't,
Sure.
but now you just have the urge to do it. And now you have this sudden realization that this is the first major thing that you've found. And at that point, you can then, assuming it's dark or the evening, you can then have something like in the distance, a howler's herd, or as Elfbait was describing last stream, just have something unearthly, something that is certainly alive, or it could be, from nature, but it's not an animal that you entirely recognize, and it's eerie. And then from there, you can sort of fade it out, and now you've sort of set it, you've built it in.
Mm-hmm.
So we all have these wonderful devices in our pockets that we have all the time, right?
Oh yes, yep.
Money.
So as
No,
that
I
moment
don't have
happens,
money.
as that moment happens, suddenly in the room, that will scare the shit out of them if the phone rings. Do they answer? Do they go? What do they do? You can do little. It doesn't have to be horror. It doesn't have to be supernatural. It can be mundane. They pick it up, nothing, zero. Or they pick it up, and someone says their name, and then the line goes dead. Anything. When they're investigating the house, they find the name of the old man who lived there with his wife, who supposedly drowned in the pond, and his name was Ivan. And when one of them says Ivan, fucking on the edge of the wind, they hear Ivan. And you make sure every time they say the word Ivan, that fucking happens. There will come a moment where the players will literally look at you and go, stop fucking doing that! They're on edge now.
I can imagine that they'll also turn around and be like, oh, Ivan, and then you have to do it several times. So yes, that will be a case. But
they'll do that, but I'm just saying,
they will do it, but let them do it, because they will wear themselves out quicker than you will. And when it comes to that sense of constitution, when they start saying these things and you are then reminding them of these things, and I mean, if you then have the capabilities like I was able to at my university, just dim the light at intervals as it gets darker and darker. I mean, you can really sort of get a different level of immersion. And now again, that's assuming you've got these kind of facilities.
Yeah.
But just these layers, this onion, as they keep on getting deeper, it is meant to sort of like immerse the players in. And again, not to the level of where they're getting uncomfortable or feeling, to the point of where it's, you as a person, but you get them so invested into it that they feel that they are there, that they are in this room, that this thing is happening. And then
as it starts ramping up, he says, dim the lights, eventually turn them off, and gather up all their phones and tablets and put them off somewhere in another room so they can't touch them and have that light source, and then hand them all candles, because in the game, the batteries all went dead on their devices and the power just went off. So now they've got candles.
You can buy some of those electrical candles that will still do the whole flickering part.
If you're worried about your friends in fire, absolutely.
Yeah. No, yes, there are. It's just sometimes you just don't do that.
So the key
I'm
to a
worried
good horror
about my
game.
friends and fire and my house. That's
Then
what
get
I'm
the electric
worried
tea
about.
lights that flicker,
So the
Yeah,
number one key
exactly.
to a good horror game is pace and drip, drip, drip.
Atmosphere.
It really is a good horror.
Music always
It's not necessarily.
low sound.
Hmm.
Don't have to have it loud. Just a little bit in the background also helps a lot.
Maybe
Okay,
a nice windy night sound.
Yeah,
Something like that.
ambience.
Yes.
Ambience to do something in the background, like the wind, if it's rainy,
Yeah.
or anything like that. Like nothing that is going to be more than just white noise. By the time you hit that first hour, you don't listen to it because it's out there in the background. It's like the TV with the crap that you don't like
Yeah.
to watch, but it's
But it
it's
helps.
there.
And
It
then when
can
it
definitely help.
stops, and then when you take it away, watch their reaction.
Mm.
When they become
Yes.
aware, the rain
Yes.
has stopped, the wind has stopped. Whoa, 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 whoa. What's going on?
I've done that with one of my online games. I have heard players just like, "What has happened? The music is gone. This is gone." Like they freeze. They have. I've seen a player literally put her arms out of both sides, arms out both sides, eyes bulging up as she just went. The music stopped. What is he doing? As he just looked at me with just fear, just watching as I went from my computer over to my seat. And I just sat there. I didn't answer. I didn't need to give them an answer, but everyone sat there and just stared at me because they expected something. And I gave them nothing. And that made them more afraid that they didn't know what the purpose of this was. That was a good session.
It's ultimately psychological warfare of a fashion.
It is.
Yeah, it is. Yes.
So again, Bear, I'm a nice DM. I just play with your mind. I just do things that will make you question it. And side one. But on the topic of psychological warfare, because I ran a Curse of Strahd campaign, and I really needed the players to understand what kind of theme that that they had walked into. I had given the pre-warning. I had talked about, what can be done, but they weren't ready for when I introduced them to the first village of Barovia, and in the 5th edition game where there is a priest whose son is in the basement. And the players have to deal with this. They weren't ready for me standing up from my seat and walking over to one of the players, getting down on my knees, pleading in character for that person to change their mind, to show mercy in a very grey morally situation. And I remember standing up as all the players had gone silent from that performance, and they were sitting there looking at me as they all felt that I had attached strings to their hearts. They were afraid of what kind of a DM that they have walked into. I remember.
In the words of Bela Lugosi, pull the strings.
Yes, I pulled them. And I remember there was one of the players who said, at the end of our first proper session of Curse of Strahd, "You are an evil and cruel DM. I look forward to the next game."
That's cool. You did a good job then.
Yeah, no, that was the highest compliment. I was like, yes, I got you.
Yep.
I got you. You're coming back for more now.
So there you go, John. You got some stuff to work with now, sir?
Absolutely. This has ended up being one of the most sort of inspirational streams I think we've ever had.
It's only been 2 topics.
And we spent the first hour and a half talking about those. We've just talked about other things for the last hour and 20 minutes or so. And I've got more notes here to play with and read and delve into when I'm bored at work tomorrow than I've ever had before. So marvelous. Marvelous. Yes. So next week we will be making Halloween monsters. That's we will be coming up with ideas for monsters for Halloween. That's
cool. That'll give me something to do at work when I'm screwing off this week.
Yeah. So it'll be a different tone next week. It'll be Halloween. It depends whether you want to lean into this
Actually,
sort of like
I already have one.
The ex-wife.
My first wife.
Waka waka waka.
But no, yeah, that's the stream for next week.
That'll be the evil witch. The second wife will be the witch of the east, I guess. I don't know.
Listen, my eldest sister is exactly 10 years older than me, so she's 63 this year. And every year for her birthday for the last 10 years, I send her the same email, Facebook message, which is, why not start an exciting new career as a bog witch? And she basically lists all the great options for her. Every year I send her this. You understand? So now I get to add the fog. You'll be able to create fog by brewing potions from children's blood. You know,
that's funny.
I bet she loves you.
I'm happy I contributed.
She'll talk to me every other part of the year, but that year she's just like.
That has tempted me to do an exclamation mark there.
Son of a bitch!
It'll never cease to be funny.
To you?
Yeah, it's relentless. It's relentless.
I will visit the UK someday. It'll cease to be funny. I promise.
Is that when I learn fear? But no. It's been a really, really a good stream. Better than I'd expected in terms of content in the end, because I was sat here all by myself at the start, wondering if anybody was going to come along. And thank you to you for joining me and keeping everybody enthused and engaged. It's been very good. So when are we playing some more horror games? How about next Thursday on my Discord?
No, I'm good.
Yeah.
Thanks. I'm okay.
Yeah.
Okay. But no, I'll create some more.
Leave a reminder on your Discord.
The event section we play, but yeah, I'm going to run lots more Call of Cthulhu as much as possible on there, because I think it really works through Discord, mainly because without using like Roll20 and tokens or whatever, it gets people focused on voices and descriptions rather than what they see on screen, moving something around on screen.
Yeah.
The theatre of mind is the best for horror.
Absolutely.
Yep.
No Jenga for you.
Just be ready to put in some work.
Not seeing the monster is the scariest thing.
The oldest fear man knows is fear of the unknown. That is why you don't show the monster till the third act.
Yep.
If you ever show it at all.
Well, yeah. Sometimes you want to get to the fireworks factory, man.
Yeah.
On that note, I am going to call it a night for myself. I need some beauty sleep because I've got a busy day tomorrow.
Have a good night.
Well, thank you, Saxius.
Thank you.
And to close the stream, well, I'm going to say thank you, Saxius. Thank you, Slan. Thank you, Bear. Thank you, Daniel. It's been a highly entertaining stream. I've thoroughly enjoyed it. Bear, you have a channel to shill. Go on.
Oh, yeah, we're doing 8 p.m. Eastern time tonight. We've got our second part of sci-fi role-playing. So, John's going to be there. That's for
I'm going to be asleep.
No, you're going to stay up for that. It's sci-fi role-playing. It's your number one favorite thing, man. Absolutely. But yeah, that's going to be happening in about an hour's time over.
Oh, my God. Mage, that's funny.
No, it's not. Puns are the worst form of humor. That's horror. Me stuck in a room listening to puns all day. But yeah, come on by, check it out. You might enjoy it. We're going to be talking about stuff.
I'll be there.
Cool.
Good.
Right. Talk to you guys later.
See ya.
Cheers. Thank you all. Thank you, chat. And I'll be back on Friday where we'll die in House of Hell once again because we've already gone the wrong way. Cheers all.
Bye.
See ya.
Bye.